You're tuned in to HorrorSlop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is HorrorSlop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
Hell of a thing to see staring out of a crib. Each house is its own apocalypse. Its own ruined city for me to wander. Whiskey in the toilet cistern. Fentanyl under the bed. Bills past due. And it doesn't just end with the people we kick out. These places are empty so long you'll often get squatters. Usually harmless. Not always. Some have the potential to be thoroughly lethal. Stringy men and women with flinty eyes and missing teeth who come bursting out of moldy old blankets and indoor tents, slashing box cutters wildly at the air. You could play tic-tac-toe on my forearms from all the defensive wounds. Even when they've moved on, the things they leave behind aren't exactly safe. Fumes from homemade labs can rot your lungs, and HIV-positive needles stuffed down the sides of old sofa cushions wait to prick curious fingers. And the cooks get real paranoid about being robbed, so they like to rig their homes with traps. They get inventive with whatever's lying around. Shards of glass on spring-loaded broom handles. Trick floorboards over boxes of razor blades. Shit-smeared knives hidden beneath false window sills. Every now and again I find a trap that's been set off. A baseball bat rigged to lash out at anyone entering the kitchen, blood and hair dripping from the bent nails hammered into the wood. No sign of the poor fucker who set it off, just a grisly trail of gore leading out of the house and into the nearby woods. Most likely candidate is the guy who set the trap. These addicts stay up for days and pass out, then when they wake up the first thing they do is head for their stash, not remembering what they left behind. Meth is a hell of a drug. These poor guys fry their brains out in the middle of nowhere. I can't even begin to imagine what they think they see out there. What visits them in the dark. Found this trailer once that had been rigged with damn near 100 traps. They weren't particularly sophisticated, but they were numerous and vicious and desperate, and they circled the lone motorhome out in the middle of the desert like an invading army made of knives and bear traps and stolen guns and even a few hastily made IEDs. Took me and a bomb squad a week just to get to the front door, and by the time we opened it we were all fairly certain of one simple fact: this place hadn't been rigged to keep thieves out. Whoever had set the traps had been scared of something leaving. Probably just drug-fueled paranoia on behalf of whoever set them, but I think the idea that something was in there waiting for us got under our skin anyway. During the operation we'd sometimes get shouted reports of someone moving around in the trailer and the whole site would go to hell. Armed men and women lying on their bellies, iron sights lined up on the front door, hands shaking. I guess we kept asking ourselves over and over what's in there that had someone so scared they set all these traps. Cops wrote it off. Meth is a hell of a drug, so they say. We all knew that. Only I wasn't so sure. I've seen a lot of weird shit. Who knows what visited that poor guy out in the wild, so far from civilization. A lot of life gets lived out in the world, out on the plains or in forests and amongst hills, far from prying eyes. You get a sense of it in my job. The sheer quantity of untold stories. Failed dreams, great triumphs. Abandoned canvases. Well-worn guitars. Heydays that came and went, or simply never came at all. Most stories follow a rhythm. Most. Some, like that doll, raise profound questions. Others aren't really stories at all, so much as nightmares just waiting for the next victim. Although that is a bit of an extreme example. Most of the time we just blame it on radon or meth fumes and condemn it. Had this one place. A farmhouse where a family of 5 had lived for nearly 60 years. By the time I got there the kids were adults and the parents had been dead for a while. The children had resisted selling the family home, tried to keep up with the payments. But they had their own debts and in the end the bank got its pound of flesh. At a glance the house didn't look too bad. Bit run down, sure. But my standards are low. Crack den low. Windows were intact. No graffiti. Roof hadn't been stripped. Satellite dish was still up. From where I sat in my car, gulping down a lukewarm bottle of water that had spent the drive tumbling around the passenger footwell, the house was relatively untouched by anything except nature and time. What about that freezer? Did you ever use it? I asked. A dentist's chair modified with restraints. And a stain. A vague Rorschach blob of ancient browns and almost greens that pooled outwards from a patch in the corner. It had texture. I knew that stain. I'd seen it before. Residue left behind after the professionals have finished peeling a desiccated corpse off a hard surface. At first I assumed someone had moved the source of that stain. There were even footprints. But they didn't look right. Something about them made me queasy. They had not been left in the residue. They were made of it. Something or someone covered in that stuff had been stomping around down there. Until that moment the inspection had been mundane and boring, but it isn't every day you stumble across a hidden dungeon. Now I was suddenly presented with a hell of a family secret, and one that didn't quite make sense. I stood there for a good minute trying to make the pieces of that puzzle fit. Had someone moved a corpse and gotten covered in rotten flesh, then walked around leaving a trail? Why the fuck had they done it barefoot? And why not clean it up afterwards? And how had they been so clumsy, yet so clean as well? There were no drag marks. There were teeth marks on some of them. Maybe she died first. Maybe he did. Maybe he got bored and left her to starve, or maybe he nearly got caught and decided to put it all to an end. Maybe she snuck something sharp and killed herself. But she died for sure and she stayed dead a long time. At least a couple months for that kind of liquefaction. She lost cohesion. Skin. Muscle. Blood like the plug of mold that forms on top of forgotten coffee. I could see it in my head, her collapse. A claymation time-lapse. A riot of colors. Only somehow the natural cycle broke. She didn't go away completely. And no one came to take her away. Those were her prints on the floor and walls and ceiling, weren't they? Somehow they're not even the worst of my wounds. Just the biggest. The most visible. At least those scars made it easy to convince the bank not to sell. Normally it takes a lot of effort, but they took one look at the doctor's reports and agreed to condemn it thoroughly, pass the land on to whatever strange governmental department handles this kind of thing. That particular house has been left to crumble. No piece of paper or deed or mortgage payment is taking it back from Marion. We can only shut it off. The land is fenced, and every window has been slapped with so many toxic gas signs that I can only hope no one else is stupid enough to ever go back inside.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah, that's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
Now, it's tough to describe a man made of metal as ancient, but there's really no other word for him. He's been carrying on without fault or fail for decades now, but Aftermath always looks like he's on the edge of total collapse. I ain't never seen a more rusted piece of machinery in all my days, and as best as Pa tries, he can only ever scrub off the surface scuzz. The rust goes deep. He spots me through the haze. Those cracked, traffic light-esque circles of eyes of his flash a pleasant aqua green, and he sets my sister down onto the damp field grass. He raises a hand in a wave, gears cranking and clattering as he does so. "Good day, Miss Sophia. Care for any assistance with the chickens this morning?" Aftermath nods with a clank, and returns to his game with Feeder and Yulia. Aftermath likes the fields the best. He'll work with the animals on occasion, and when asked, but some of them are mighty frightened of him. The animals, I mean. And he'll only ever help collect eggs. Move the birds around. Shear the sheep, that kind of thing. He won't help with slaughter, when the time calls for it. "I am sorry, Master Feeder. I am unable to bring harm to sentient creatures." So instead he picked him right up and marched him the whole 3 miles back to the house so Pa could take the boy to the doctor. He's a curious fellow. Especially considering those 3 miles didn't seem at all that comfortable for poor Feeder, to say the least. As I mentioned earlier, until recently, around a week ago, our family were the only ones who knew about Aftermath's existence. But he was noticed by another neighborhood boy by the name of Max. It's never been laid out in any kind of straight terms, but the implication of Max's knowledge is tragically obvious. He holds us under the threat of blackmail, of snitching, of spilling the secret of Aftermath's presence here. Max is terrified of my father, and avoids him where he can, but he ain't the slightest bit scared of Aftermath. He well knows about the robot's protocol. The boy's holding something now in his hand, a rock I think, and he brings back his arm and hurls it hard through the air. I watch the rock fly over and hit Aftermath in the side of the head with a hard crack. Feeder and Yulia cry out in distress. Aftermath does not reply. Only watches through the drizzle with those lamplight, watery green eyes. "Don't speak like that in front of the kids, Max," I reply coldly. "What are you doing here?" "Can't I come see my favorite girl in the morning?" he replies, leaning his face close to mine. I pull back, and irritation flashes across his face. "That's better," he grins. "Now come on, go and get dressed. I'm taking you out into town today." The irritation returns to his face. "You got a robot to do your work for you, don't you?" He shoots a glance behind me at Aftermath. "What's the matter, he broken or something? Since when were you so tormaz? Stop thinking, slow and come out with me." "You're a nasty bully." Yulia shouts at him, and I see Max's eyes leave mine and dart over my shoulder. "Leave her alone, Max, all right? I'm coming with you, I'll come into town," I mutter through clenched teeth, and he releases me. I hate him. I turn to look at my siblings. They're holding tight to Aftermath's legs. My eyes meet the robot's. They flash a bright green through the haze. Backslash. And number X200B. "Max," I say, as diplomatically as I can, "let's just. Look, you gotta give me a real chance to get to know you. It's too soon." "Max," I grit my teeth and put a hand on his arm. "Take it slow. I'll see you soon, okay? But now I gotta get back. You haven't forgotten about tonight? I want you all pretty for me, too. None of these farm girl overalls. Come on, Sophia, tonight's the night your pa's away, remember? That's what you said, he had business in town. I was gonna bring over the alcohol, and that picnic I planned." Max clenches his fists. "But I had everything prepared. I got the food all made dash. Sorry. Another time. I force myself to wave and then quickly turn to leave, striding over the field and along the fastest route back to the house. I don't turn back, but after a while I hear the car starting, and driving steadily away. And number X200B. He had to go out, Sophia, she says, looking up at me, worry writ across her face. Feeder is hurt. And number X200B. I freeze. Max. Is he sure, Yulia? He sure he didn't see what happened? Feeder ain't never fallen and banged his head in his whole life. And number X200B. A knock on the door sends goosebumps shoot on up my arms. I turn to look at in taut silence, we all do. The atmosphere changes at once. And the knock comes again. Ain't nobody gonna let me in, comes Mac's voice from beyond the door. Of course, Max, I reply, thinking over my options. But it's too late. I've let him know that I'm here, and he pushes through into the room, uninvited. I stand defiant, I have to. The grass might still be damp from this morning. I ain't getting any fine dress of mine ruined, not for you, not for nobody. Now stop being so fussy and take me out for that starlight picnic, okay? And number X200B. And number X200B. And number X200B. Max is breathing heavy as he leads us through the fields. He stumbles a little too. Max, I ask, have you been drinking already? How the hell did you drive here? Just a little, he replies, reaching into his bag and pulling out a small bottle of vodka, half empty. He shakes it in his hand and the remaining liquid sloshes around. But you ain't gonna grass on me, are you? He laughs and plants a wet kiss on the side of my mouth. I shiver in disgust. He takes my hand in his as we walk through the night, the breeze gentle. I sit with him, but I decline the alcohol. I'd better not, Max. Vodka ain't my drink anyhow. Vodka ain't your drink, he replies, coolly. And you didn't think to mention this to me at any point. A vein bulges in the side of his neck. He licks his upper teeth then takes another swig from the bottle, before holding the new one out to me. Not even one sip. You won't take one damn sip of vodka after knowing the trouble I went to get it for you? For us? Heart pounding, I reach out to him, try to placate him. And he pulls something from his bag. Looks like a length of rope. Before I can really process, however, he is on me. Heavier than he looks, and holding me down, quick as a flash wrapping that rope around my arms, muttering and seething, stinging vodka dripping from his lips and onto my face. Max. Stop, what the hell has gotten into you? Stop for Christ's sake. Max. He takes another careless swig, eyes dark, and stands up. He begins, with the fumbling motions of the intoxicated, to unbutton his pants. Miss Sophia. Would you care for any assistance? And number X200B. I force my body round, twisting my neck to see. Max turns likewise, terror passes momentarily across his face, then vanishes at once, replaced with a laugh. Aftermath. Help. Please. Restrain him. Max rises to a stand and points a shaking finger at Aftermath. Stay right there, robot, stay right the fuck there. He takes another swig of vodka. You can't harm a sentient creature, that right? Well, you try and untie these ropes and you'll cause Miss Sophia a great deal of squirmin' and shiftin', and that glass is gonna do a world of harm to her little mouth. So you keep your distance, alright? I don't understand. I think to myself in panic. Back when Feeder broke his arm, Aftermath was able to carry him all the way back to the farmhouse, even despite all his wincing and whimpering. So why isn't he coming to untie me now? In fact, you know what? Max shouts, grabbing the last of his pierogi, taking a bite, sipping on another mouthful of vodka to wash it down. You can turn your rusted ass around, go back to the house, and forget all about this, robot. Or I'm gonna hurt Sophia. I'm gonna hurt her a great dash. And number X200B. Again, and again. And number X200B. I can only watch, wide-eyed. CL Cluff Glurk. Max chokes, a wordless plea. His eyes begin to roll back up into his head. And number X200B. And number X200B. And I am unable to bring harm to sentient creatures. And number X200B. Mac's scream catches somewhere between his lungs and his throat. His chest contracts repulsively, and he scrambles drunkenly to his feet, stumbling. His legs carry him one direction, his torso tries to take him another. His oxygen-starved brain has lost control. The boy's eyes go white, and he falls. Tripping over his own feet, he collapses. Dropping like a stone, and off over the edge of the cliff. And number X200B. Backslash. Aftermath left after that to go and get help. Not before carefully untying my gag, of course, but then I made him go to get Yulia to help him set me free. The cuts on my inner cheeks sting, and will for a while, but they ain't permanent, the doctor said. My pa rushed me there as soon as he returned with Feeder, the poor man. 2 trips in one night. Feeder, likewise, will be fine, by the way. No permanent harm done, just some stitches needed. It's Aftermath that I'm most worried about now. Everything ain't all wrapped up in a nice little bow. A boy has gone missing. My pa was beyond himself with rage when he found out what Max had been doing with me. Took a time to calm him down. He said that I should have gone to him the second the boy started causing trouble and he would have beat the bastard black and blue. And number X200B. I've caught sight of the robot through my bedroom window, on more than one occasion since that night, far out and away, a little figure in the distance, standing on the cliffside where Max fell to the rocks and the water below, staring silently out to sea. But regardless, for now at the least, we are safe. And number X200B. Backslash.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I Was Fucking Fat, by Beifel's Disciple. I was fucking fat. There's simply no way to articulate the powerlessness that comes with morbid obesity. The path to normal is so fucking long. Each step is agonizing when exercise is constant pain and food is the only good thing in life. Imagine that the world expected you to hold your breath for a year. How many times would you try before failing yet again? Food was the sweet ambrosia that made getting out of bed worthwhile. I rolled my eyes. I think I'm a pretty good judge of what I want, Mom. Besides, it will be one last fun thing we do before I move out, I offered a wan smile. But what if I want to have fun, she snapped. Mom rested her fingers on her lips in shock, realizing that her words must have cut me far deeper than she had planned. I mean, I would want us to have fun. She stared at the ceiling awkwardly. I don't want you to have to deal with my embarrassment every time you wear a swimsuit. With the house to myself, I spent a lot of time crying. It came to a head one day that week when I looked back on what I'd accomplished since waking up. An open bottle of vitamins lay on my desk, but I hadn't taken one. 9:13 p.m. was illuminated on my clock, and I reflected on what I had consumed throughout the day. Most of the dishes and boxes were still in my room, festering in a hopeless heap of garbage. I tried to imagine my life past the age of 30. Nothing came to mind. Let's be honest. I was going to eat myself to death, and sooner rather than later, one commenter wrote. For the first time in years, I did not fall asleep immediately upon laying down. They'd requested my name and address, but no credit card. Isn't that odd? I'd been skeptical at first, but figured that it would only have been a scam if they had some way to access my mom's bank account, or possibly even mine. The thought of someone sneaking into my room and having his way with me caused me to laugh aloud. The sudden sad smile that I felt was the only thing to remind me that I'd once again been crying. I awoke to a splitting headache. As usual, my body did not want to get out of bed. But I was dizzy. I was uncomfortable. And I was cold. Panic overwhelmed me. My breathing slowed, and I began to analyze. If, whoever it was wanted me dead, it would have already happened. They needed me for something. My hand wrapped around a cool cylindrical object. I brought it closer to me and felt it carefully. It was a plastic bottle of water. I set it aside and kept looking. I found nothing. Panic was rising once again in my chest. I couldn't block the image of excited Coke shooting to the top of a shaken bottle. Then I found the note. A pound of fat contains 3,500 calories. An immobile person will burn 1,500 calories per day. There is a better way.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Weird shit I've seen in the Marines 2B. Then the NCIS guys came in. I've dealt with them before over something else, and they are usually good-natured guys. Not these ones. Brisk, to the point, and methodical. They read off all the facts about the case like they were reading the nutrition info on a cereal box. Unsurprised and monotone. They'd definitely seen this before. They asked the same questions. When I had told them about all the creepy things I had noticed, they told me that I was probably suffering from mountain sickness too. I was beyond pissed, but I knew better than to argue with them. At the conclusion of my interview, they made me sign a document stating that I wouldn't talk about anything and that they would contact me when I was free to disclose any information. This was a few years ago and they never got back to me, so it may not be legal to talk now, but I have a cards up my sleeve that I'm not going to talk about. I stomped out my cigarette and went back inside. I managed to calm myself down and fall asleep, but I would always wake up suddenly after maybe 10 minutes. No dreams, just the overwhelming feeling that you're being observed. The next day, I packed all of my gear into the Humvee and helped the driver load some stuff into the back. The drive was uneventful and I managed to catch some sleep, only to be woken up by rough terrain here and there. When we finally arrived, it was almost afternoon and the company was preparing to cover some serious terrain that day. Just my luck. If that wasn't bad enough, I'd noticed that our compasses were acting weird. No matter how hard you tried, you would eventually end up walking towards the base of a particular mountain that was nicknamed Devil's Incline on our map. This was a military map that someone had made in the 1980s, I don't know if I'll be able to find it. Coincidentally, I also got that same feeling of being stalked again. Fuck. Finally, it stopped, and just as I thought it was gone, I heard it say my name twice, in a taunting kind of tone. Then a huge tree came tumbling down and that was it. Thanks Dick. Traumatized, everyone stayed inside until their tents until we heard trucks coming. Over the radio, we were told to pack our tents in less than 30 seconds and get on the trucks. We have no more than 5 minutes. I wasn't going to be the first one to step outside, so I waited until a good number of people got out. I've never seen a group of people move faster in my life. The tents were stuffed into their bags, poles bent, and bags were halfway on our bodies. People practically stumbled into the trucks. Updates, more pictures, questions.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
Fuck Me, by Max Voynich. Fuck me. She shakes her head. I don't think the card's meant for me, honey. Well, it's not meant for me. I don't, of course. Slip it in my wallet instead, just in case. I'm driving to work the next morning and there it is. Proud, exposed above the freeway. Hundreds, thousands of cars driving right under it. A billboard, entirely white, except for 2 words. Black, serifed font. I tell my wife I saw it above the freeway, that it must be a joke, that whoever did it to us probably did it to everyone else in the neighborhood and then some, that they've hired a whole billboard. Would you believe it, a whole billboard? She doesn't believe it. Says it sounds stupid, that she's bored of the game now. We're not players at all, honey. I'm watching TV. Can't sleep, half-finished beer by my feet. The programs all become the same, all blurred into one, flicking through the channels, catching 5 minutes at a time. He licks his teeth, looks around as if checking if people can hear, and then turns back, looks me dead in the eye, and speaks again, slower. Fuck me. Bank. And, sir, after you've deposited the agreed upon amount, would you be so kind as to fuck me? Sorry. Sorry, sir. I should have been much clearer, fuck me. I was wondering if you would like to fuck me. Can someone just say that? She's bleeding from her mouth, I think. Standing there, perfect customer service smile, but there's blood leaking from between her teeth and pooling under her lip. Some of it dribbles onto the desk, and I think it sounds like a broken gutter. Can someone just say something like that in everyday life and people just do nothing? I want to throw it away immediately, but something takes over. I haven't seen a VHS in years, and I can't help but want to know more. I set it up in the attic, plug our VHS machine into a small television set, sit and watch the video whilst holding my breath. The bags are pulled off their heads. They are young, attractive. The woman's forehead is dewed with sweat, and she glows. The man has a strong jaw, stubble, darts his tongue out to wet his lips. I guess mid-20s, maybe a little older. Any last words? His voice is run through some sort of machine, some sort of distortion applied, and it sounds deep, makes me think of old internet videos, of people who want to stay hidden. Fuck me. 2 short noises, and the acoustics of the small room muffle them. They both jerk backwards. It's about me. They laugh. My wife speaks up. I interrupt. It's not edgy, it's about me. The song is about me. They want me to fuck them, I don't know, to kill them, to buy whatever they're selling and then kill them dash. They shake their heads. I'm watching the video on repeat now, when it clicks. My stomach turns, contracts into itself, the space between my tongue and my gums dries. I try to rewatch the VHS, having to rewire the whole thing again, sitting in my boxers, belly hanging over the waistband. Fuck me. And number X200B. I think I can see them. When I look from my bedroom window, or the kitchen window at night, I can see them. Standing naked. Wearing masks, bodies exposed. Exposed in that way that's so earnest it verges on scientific, just limbs and throats and stomachs, sagging or uneven or pulled tight over bones. I don't tell my wife. I don't think she'd believe me. Continues staring. Boat. I see a boat, moored to the pier I'm walking down, drifting, tugging the rope that keeps it there, with the windows smashed. The other boats are still, empty. I decide to investigate, drawing a little closer, trying to see what's going on. A figure, slouched in the front seat, the floor slick with blood. Nothing. The boat bobs aimlessly, as if lost for words. My heart's beating faster now. I don't know what I'm getting myself into, who they are, whether they're hurt or even, God forbid, dead, or flecks of blood on the windscreen. Lips straining inward. They keep going, the sound of air escaping making blood bubble from between their lips. Let them say it, who cares? I think about calling the police, calling an ambulance. Decide against it. I'm still on the boat when I see it. The other boat moored to the pier, populated by a dozen or so naked people, all wearing the same masks, watching in impassive silence. Like a painting, I think, the way their skin stands out against the sea. I want to shout at them but it catches in my throat. The tallest one raises a glass to me, and nods, like he's recognized an old friend. I don't see this, I hear it, on the radio. They dance around what it actually says for a while, trying to avoid using those words, imply them, don't say them. Climax. A call wakes me up in the middle of the night. The voice is modulated, deep. Gives me an address. Tells me to bring my card. No response. Who is this? They hang up. I try and distract myself during the day. I try to watch TV, but the ads leer at me. I consider taking a drive but I can't stop thinking about the boat, about the body and about the way it made me retch. I have no choice. Night falls. The moon hangs pink in the sky, like some cosmic peep show. I think about what's changing on the other side, what wants us to only see flashes of itself. I can't wait any longer. I have to go in. I have to see for myself. The walk takes a minute or two, and the thin path is lit on both sides by tall wooden torches, open flames. They spit slightly, little embers floating skywards. I brace myself. Of course. I strip naked, taking a moment to look at my body before entering. I step up, ask if I need a sack. She shakes her head. Not you. I come to the end of the hallway. I make my way to the stage. I know what I'm going to do, what I have to do. I think, for a moment, I recognize a body, the curve of my wife's hips, the small of her back. Too late now. As I arrive on stage there is a brief, polite round of applause. I stand, naked, before them all. The only face visible in the whole room. I feel as if I am at sea, as if the earth beneath me is rocking from side to side. I step forward, tap the microphone. Take a breath. And number X200B. Fuck me. And number X200B.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
I reply, scratching my beard. Yes, I suppose we are, I sigh. Visitor is darkly comical way to refer to the things that clamber out of the hole. Coined because of how crushingly lonely it can get at this particular station. I've been here for 3 months now. Another 3 to go. Right. Let's head a little closer, shall we? He sighs. Fine. Are we splitting up or sticking together this time? He chuckles. The reason for this little pursuit outdoors is the rain itself. It is, unfortunately, obscuring our view, and whilst on a clear day I might be content to just sit in the hut and wait for one of the sensors to trigger, I also don't fully trust the sensor's effectiveness in such weather. So out we go. The ferns brush up against my camel-clad legs as we approach the clearing, and we take our positions beside the best lookout trees. Robbie is a little off, though. And number X200B. 3 months, I tell him. Disgusting, Robbie mutters. Where the hell do these things even come from? I have my theories. Yeah, chance would be a fine thing. But the deer is the priority for now. I take off between the trees after it, I raise the gun and fire, exploding a branch as I do so. And number X200B. And number X200B. I approach from the opposite side this time, and I raise a hand to Robbie, but, just as I expected, the man isn't looking. His interest is elsewhere, staring off into the woods. He rises to his feet. The man does not respond, and movement at the clearing's edge catches both our attentions. I raise my rifle at once, and Robbie does likewise. I begin making my way around the clearing's edge towards my colleague, barrel of the weapon fixed carefully on the stranger. Wah, hey, he says in alarm, putting up his hands. I don't understand, you guys are rangers, right? I'm not a poacher, or anything like that, he forces out an awkward laugh. I'm just lost, honestly. Literally. I'm literally lost. I'm sorry, the man replies, adjusting his glasses. I didn't realize I had an accent. A poor attempt at a joke. Another weak laugh. Tell me where you're from right now or I'll blow your head off, I tell the stranger plainly as I reach my position beside Robbie. Speak clearly. What? I reply, jerking the rifle. I said speak clearly. That isn't a real place, I tell him. What country? What damned country? This country, obviously. Please, this isn't funny, just let me go, alright. I'll find my own way. Please. I exchange a look with Robbie. The man shakes where he stands as the rain pours down through the trees, he stutters and mutters, and eventually he manages to speak, though his words are a string of nonsense. And number X200B. And number X200B. Jesus, Robbie murmurs. I consider chiding the man for allowing the creature through, but, there's no point, really. So I let it go. And number X200B. The corpse twitches in the grass beneath the rain. And number X200B. Robbie says nothing further. I gotta take a piss, man, Robbie says, breaking the silence. He clambers to his feet. I need you alert and active, my man, just piss right there. Action, Robbie. I tell him, quick, stay alert. I shove him away and raise the rifle. My copy stares at the barrel, then at me, and then swears and throws out his hands. Again. For fuck's sake. Why does he keep doing this? He turns to another of my copies and gives him a light shove in the chest. Why won't he just come back? What are we doing wrong? I choose not to partake in this little piece of theater. I take aim and fire, bursting a hole in my copy's neck. Robbie, one of them shouts, gesturing to my colleague. Tell him to come back already. We can't keep doing this. Two left now. They look at each other, and the closest holds out a hand to me. Listen, he says carefully as I reload. I know this seems impossible, and scary dash. He's right. I'm fucking terrified, though I'm doing my best not to show it. These things really are getting creative. The other copy shouts in anger. He's not going to listen, it's just like last time. The closest copy stares right into my eyes. I don't care what the others say, he tells me. I will never leave you behind. I swore it once, and it's a promise I intend to dash. Bang. And number X200B. Robbie looks over to me, and studies my face. Are you good, man? He asks, after a moment. And number X200B. I throw my hands out, exasperated. What do you want? Listen to me, you fool, my elder copy shouts back. This is the real me. The real you. And this is the real Robbie. The real Robbie. He puts a hand on the copy of Robbie's shoulder, and his other on my daughter's. She stares at me, wide-eyed. He looks so young, she says. She calls over. Dad. It's me. Do you remember? Please tell me you remember. Remember the trip we took to the beach? You took us to the coast on my 10th birthday. We saw dolphins. She reaches up to her neck and lifts a necklace with a smooth little shiny pebble attached. You let me keep this pebble, we had it turned into a necklace. Bang. My so-called future self drops to the ground. My daughter screams, and the elder copy of Robbie drops to his knees at the corpse. No. No, he cries, and I take him out as well. The copy of my daughter is the hardest. Shaking where she stands, she turns to stare at me, defiant. Daring me to shoot in cold silence. And number X200B. Bang. And number X200B. Down she goes. Just another leaking corpse. And number X200B. And number X200B. How do you do it? He murmurs. How the fuck do you it? I rub a sleeve across my eyes. You do it so easily, he says quietly, the disgust in his voice quite clear. Is that what you think? I ask him. I turn to face him, my jaw set as the rain leaks from my chin. Tell me, Robbie. Tell me if what I am doing is wrong. Should I be letting these things and these abominations out into the world? And where do they come from, exactly? If where they're coming from is so great, then why leave it all? If there's something worse that's pushing them away, then that's all the more incentive to just keep shooting. I don't know which one of these horrors is the worst, so, better safe than sorry. What if they have something important to tell us, he asks me. Important? Fuck them. It's all tricks and lies. The second I let my guard down, I am lost. And, speaking of which, I raised the rifle and pointed at his head. He backs away. Wait, hold on, he laughs anxiously, then stops when he realizes that I am not kidding around. You've gone mad, he says simply. You've lost yourself in your head. It's me. It's Robbie. He didn't. So after that, I just played along, keeping an eye on him. As I said, it gets real lonely up here, and I miss that man a great deal. And number X200B. The corpses will have melted away by morning. There won't be any more visitors tonight. The black sludge means that the tunnel needs time to recharge. I reach for my mug and take a slow sip of cold, miserable tea. And number X200B.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
How I Learned About Something That I Really Fucking Wish I'd Never Known, by Beifel's Disciple. Every person has at least one distinct moment that fucks up the rest of their life in some small way. That moment can never be unfucked, and that person will never again see the world in quite the same light. I was nearly unaware that I had consumed half the crab. My hand had been floating to my lips of its own accord, completely detached from the conscious discretion of my brain. Sir, he insisted as loudly as possible without attracting even more attention from the nearby guests. Sir, I need to speak with you, please. I looked at him in confusion as my hand reached for another forkful. It shouldn't have been crunchy. The deep-fried crab was supposed to have 8 legs. But 2 of those should have been claws. Then it twitched. It caressed my tongue as it tumbled from my mouth and landed on the plate with a soft clunk. My stomach had dissolved the breading, revealing the true nature of the meat beneath. It seems, sir, that the man sought revenge. He wanted to hurt you, to horrify you, he gulped. So he acquired a tarantula and deep-fried it instead of a crab. The uneaten half of the tarantula was in full squirm, mindlessly pushing itself around the spunk-filled plate. The tiny, razor-sharp hairs were now poking through the breading as it flaked off and dissolved in the Riesling puke. Its 4 remaining legs slowly waved at me like half a hairy hand. Well, I shrieked, ignoring the increasing shock of the guests around us, are you going to call an ambulance? Don't worry, sir, he responded, relieved. You will be fine. The FDA allows a certain amount of arachnid parts in food. In fact, you consume spiders all the time. The only thing different about today is that you've seen how it happens. BD.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite serves. Hope you're hungry.
I love my new job, but I don't understand the mandatory popsicles, by Batuto. I sit at a desk all day and enter numbers into an Excel spreadsheet. It is mind-numbing, repetitive, and antisocial. I have a spacious cubicle, my own computer, and a chair with lumbar support. However, there is one rule they rigorously enforce. They offer a simple spread of cherry, grape, and mango. For the diabetic staff members, they have sugar-free alternatives. They taste and feel like normal popsicles. But every time I peel back the wrapper and take the first lick, I feel at my core that something is intrinsically wrong about the whole thing. I don't want it to sound as though I don't like popsicles. I think they are fantastic. They taste good, are super refreshing, and take about 5 minutes to consume. At first I felt uncomfortable standing in a cramped boardroom with about 24 other people and eating a frozen treat. After a couple weeks I got used to it. But I still could not shake the feeling that it was an incredibly eccentric workplace policy to make popsicle eating a mandatory part of the job. The only time I really interacted with my manager was during the daily popsicle meetings. Until yesterday. I glanced into the nearby cubicles. I noticed that none of my coworkers seemed to pay these red-clothed men any attention at all. Completely oblivious, they continued tapping away on their keyboards. I saw the man in red suddenly bolt alert. He stopped what he was doing and whispered something into his wrist. He passed it to me and waited expectantly. I stood up and scanned the office. All the strangers and all of their curious pieces of equipment had vanished. I loaded up Excel and went to work. I didn't see the men in red scrubs or the odd mushrooms for the rest of the day. I came up with a few possible explanations. The best explanation was that maybe the popsicles prevented me from seeing something. Instead of blocking out pain, they inhibited the brain's ability to process certain images. That would mean that the strangers have always been there, lurking invisibly all around us. I haven't seen them until today because I have been consistent with my morning licks. Unfortunately, that put me in a major dilemma. My job depended upon my consumption of the frozen snack. Despite its eccentricities, I really wanted to keep his job. Additionally, I would keep a plastic bag in the collar of my shirt that would allow me to spit out the excess liquid. This morning I tried out my plan. This was the moment of truth. I unwrapped the popsicle, tongued my mouth condom into position, and slowly slid the frozen treat into the rubber sheath. Part of the condom dipped past the back of my throat, triggering my highly sensitive gag reflex. I realized too late that I should have taken this weakness into consideration before enacting this plan. Everyone in the boardroom stared at the spectacle. I coughed so hard my eyes watered. Moments later the manager took me to his office. The HR rep followed shortly after. They terminated my employment. Apparently, since I was still in my probationary period, they had no problem releasing me. They said my behavior was unbecoming in a professional environment. My manager then said, "They aren't really a problem as long as you eat your popsicles."
Whew, that one gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
Dr. Dana Danworth here. Your friendly neighborhood paranormal dentist. Last time I introduced you to my daughter, a baby that had been born cursed and given to me in return for a pair of dentures. I decided not to opt for Sadie or Nellie as Coco had suggested. Both lovely names, but neither felt fitting for the little girl that I bonded with in the weeks following my appointment with the crone, Eudora Finch. She became Pearl. Coco said that it was too much like a bad dentist pun for pearly whites, but it fit her perfectly, and it stuck. My beautiful little Pearl. Evan was a fantastic caretaker. He had experience with special children and came highly recommended by the nannying agency. Evan had a stomach of steel and wasn't at all fazed by feeding her small rodents. He took quite some delight in her giggle, in fact. I felt safe coming to the practice and knowing that Pearl was with Evan, but I did cancel overnights for quite some time, opting to spend them with her. It took a few months before I was ready to do those shifts again, and I insisted on finishing by 1 a.m. the very latest. I didn't want to be an absent mother, not like mine had been. That night I was packed. My go bag by the door was familiar yet felt somehow so different this time. I brushed it aside. It was just teeth, right? I could never understand it. She'd sustained more than a few injuries on these trips, but nothing dampened her eagerness. I love her, I really do, but it was tiresome. I was annoyed before I even got in the car. It's not that far, a little village called Ablefort. It looked quite quaint on the postcard. Oh. I thought I showed you. Not every day a patient books by postcard, is it? I turned the card over and was met with the most beautiful cursive I've ever seen. The exact wording escapes me, I was too caught up in the lettering, but the note was insistent that the appointment take place in the village under the cover of darkness. Strange. Coco stopped the car on a country lane at the edge of a vast field, characterized only by a large, dilapidated farmhouse. That doesn't sound safe. It was too late. Before I could even finish the sentence, Coco had spun the steering wheel and sent the car straight over the uneven, muddy terrain. I clung to my seat, knuckles turning white as she laughed. Will you relax, Dana? I got some special tires put on this thing. It's about time they got some use. She chuckled with utter delight, accelerating and making revving noises in time with the car. After about 400 yards she slammed her foot on the brake pedal, directly outside the old farmhouse. Here. She squealed. Just like a teenager would as the school bus pulls up to a boring museum. It didn't matter where I took her, she just enjoyed being out. Remind me of the patient's name, please. It wasn't on the postcard. Oh, She didn't say. I called to confirm the booking, but our conversation was very brief. It didn't bode well. Any monster that adverse to visitors and locals accessing them generally had good reason for it. I had never arrived at a home visit in an actual home either. It was a welcome change of pace from the dingy swamps and dark caves I had anticipated. I stepped towards the rotting, wooden door, secured by multiple locks and bolts, barely visible through the worn paneling. I knocked 3 times, loudly, hard in my throat. The anticipation never got any easier. We're professionals, Ms. Jacobs. We can assure you we were discreet. Coco chimed in. I wondered what part of her car clambering across mud was discreet, but I decided not to voice my concerns. Coco had a far better bedside manner than I could dream of. Well, that's why I'm a little confused. Forgive me for being presumptive, but you seem perfectly able to attend my dentistry, may I ask? My interest was piqued. I started trying to guess what she may be referring to. The suggestion that her family would perish helped me to categorize the patient before I'd even met them. Esme Jacobs was living with a curse. Bloodline and area-specific monsters were a fascination to me. At the time of Esme Jacobs' appointment, I was yet to meet the beast of Coeur Hill and was somewhat naive to the power these creatures had on any that crossed their path. I retained the excitement of a newbie. I sipped my tea, catching a glimpse of Coco, already enthralled in the tale. My great-grandmother was married to the son of the village mayor at the age of 22. Her father owned the land that this house sits on, and the marriage was mostly political. There wasn't an iota of love involved. The affair was exposed when the boy grew into the spitting image of my grandfather, causing a huge scandal in the village. The mayor's son was humiliated. Rightly so, I suppose, but it didn't justify his course of action. What happened? Coco asked, totally entranced by Esme Jacobs. She was flippant. Despite the enormity of the tragedy she described, she seemed quite dissociated from it. It only furthered my curiosity. My grandfather struggled with the loss of his soul mate and the children. He drank himself senseless at first. People reported him talking to himself by the edge of the land, next to the trees. But he wasn't alone. They've been a local legend for hundreds of years. The people of this village believe that there's a race of forest folk, who aren't like us. Who can grant wishes. She looked quite indignant, as if no one had ever been so dismissive of tales of the forest folk. I wasn't intending to be dismissive, however. Forest folk, as she called them, were highly elusive creatures, fascinating monsters. Not one that I'd had the pleasure of working with. But not half as fascinating as the particular wish I knew they'd granted. I don't know. No one ever mentioned it. She replied, racking her brain for an old conversation or tidbit of knowledge that just wasn't there. They rejected the dead child. I thought aloud to myself, trying to suppress the stream of thoughts hitting me. Thought it was a gift gone wrong. My limited knowledge let me down. I stopped looking at the floor and stared Esme straight in the eyes. I'd like to meet my patient, please. It's cliché to keep a monster in the basement. I wish that some of the people cursed with such home visitors would start getting more creative. I thought of Pearl and her stone parents. Would they have kept her in the basement if they'd lived to see her for what she was? He sat alone, chained in the corner of the dark room, on the cold concrete floor. I wondered why it was only him, no changeling for the deceased little girl in sight. He was pale, dead-looking in fact, with blue veins connecting his features like a dot to dot. I could understand why she wouldn't want to bring him into the practice. A child that resembled a walking corpse would garner quite some attention in the city. "What's your name?" I asked as gently as I could. Catching a tiny glimmer of light hitting him from an air vent, I noticed his emaciated frame. He didn't respond to my question, so I turned my attention to Esme. "What's his name? And what does he eat?" I asked, angry at the state of the boy. I knew that changelings were rumored to be incredibly dangerous, but seeing a perceived child in that condition would tug at anyone's heartstrings. "It's Dennis. And this is the problem, doctor." "Hi Dennis, my name is Dana. Esme tells me you've hurt your teeth. I'm a doctor and I'm here to try and help. Could I take a look?" Reluctantly, Esme led Coco back upstairs, leaving me and my bag of tools alone with Dennis. I had a few burning questions to ask before getting to work. I looked at what remained of his teeth, certain that it was agonizing. "I'm not supposed to talk about her. She's been gone for a long time now. How did you know?" He looked up at me with a wisdom in his dark eyes. My heart sunk as I remembered a particularly nasty human belief. That in order to influence the return of a child stolen by the Fae you could harm the changeling, forcing them to swap the original back for it. It was a belief that caused a lot of unnecessary suffering in less regulated times. So I took action. Action that I never thought I'd take. And I said one. "Run." Run he did. As emaciated as Dennis was, he had some serious speed. I struggled to keep up, sprinting behind him up the stairs, ready to grab Coco and get in the car. I should have anticipated the changeling's actions. I sometimes wonder if I did and subconsciously encouraged them. "What the fuck, Day?" She nodded and we fumbled with the handles either side of the vehicle. My hand shook as I fastened my seatbelt, thinking about the corpse of my making that we left behind. Had that been worth the freedom of a monster? To the center of the group was a tall, beautiful woman who radiated a natural light. Both her hands perched on the shoulder of a young boy. A young boy who was recognizable. The same, but different. He looked healthy, plumper. His family had fixed him. I'd never quite felt reverence for a patient like it. Sometimes we are the monsters. The convention.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
And I'm just going to jump into this one. "Come on," I said. "We better get moving." Emmett Emerson, I said. I'm really sorry that this is happening to you, but we have to get out of this basement. There are bad things down here. There are bad things everywhere, but these ones are particularly aggressive. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. A red fuzzy flurry of movement. I grabbed Robin's arm. She bit my hand. And that was the last thing she ever said, as Louis the lobster's massive claw closed around her waist and sliced her neatly in half. Backslash. Backslash. I reached down to give him a hand up. Even in the dark, I recognized him. Jason Porter. He'd been a freshman when I first got locked in here, which would make him a junior now. We'd talked a few times, and he'd seemed cool. Listen, Jason, I said. We have to get the fuck out of the basement, stat. Never seen you in my life, dude, said Jason. That's when it finally occurred to me. Even if he, or the others, didn't remember me personally, they had to have heard about my disappearance, right? Claremont, Maine is a small-ass town, after all. My name is Emmett Emerson, I said. You haven't heard anything about me. I was a year ahead of you. We talked a couple times. More than that, I disappeared from the face of the earth a little over 2 years ago. Ring any bells? Not Miss Falloway, I said, Mr. Hilrow. I dressed up a dildo to look like him and named it Mr. Dildow. Other than that, yeah. Detention, then the monsters, then the gas. 2 years of that shit. I nodded. The kid seemed to grasp the severity of the situation at least. You hungry? I asked. Let's hit up the cafeteria and I'll fill you in. I tensed up and turned to look. Then I relaxed. No, I said, that's just Lily. Cafeteria closed again? I asked. Fire? I asked. Or rats? You get used to it. Mine's dead, I said. Yours? Internet? Asked Jason. At the computer lab? Windows? Never the windows, I said. Windows are out of the question. Stay away from the windows. The gas, it comes out of the vents every morning, said Jason. That's right. And I've tried every trick in the book. Training myself to hold my breath. I got up to 4 minutes, but it wasn't enough. Have you tried leaving notes? Asked Jason. Like in the lockers? You haven't seen the locker monsters yet? I said. I haven't tried it myself, but I saw one girl do it. That was the only glimpse of an actual locker monster that I've gotten. The girl went to slip the note in the little vents there, and the door swung open. This tiny green arm shot out of the darkness and pulled her in, slamming the door behind her. I heard her screaming in there, even tried to open the locker, but it was closed tight. The screaming didn't last long. Oh, said Jason, shoveling in a spoonful of mashed potatoes. What about a note somewhere else? Somewhere that's not obvious. Jason frowned. What kind of grades were you pulling, before you got locked up here? CS, pretty much, I admitted. Same here. We need that library. We're not smart enough to do this on our own. But the bookworms, I said. Well, sounds like we got a couple different infestations around here, said Jason. We got the monsters and we got the spiders. Don't see anything we can do about that right now that you haven't already tried. Then we got the bookworms. And the rats. What if we catch the rats, and set them out as bait for the bookworms? We didn't know what we were looking for. We'd been so reliant on the internet our whole lives, if we ever wanted to know anything, we'd just Google it. Now, we didn't even know what we wanted to know. We just grabbed a bunch of books that looked like they might be useful. We got books about spiders, books about the paranormal, books about the local history of our town, books on construction, science books, and so on. While I was there, I found a copy of the yearbook from my freshman year. I wasn't in there. I showed it to Jason, who found a copy of the yearbook from his freshman year. Neither of us was in it. We collected dozens of books, and in a mad dash past Louis the Lobster, dumped half of them down into my hole, and half of them into his hole, so that we would have them there with us. I had an idea, but I didn't say it. "Who's that?" "Mr. Hilrow, and Miss Falloway," said Jason. I shuddered. "Okay. So?" "Okay," I said, "I understand, but I still don't see where you're going with this. How did you even come up with this shit?" We pressed up against a wall as we passed a wrangler, and Jason finished up, "I mean, it's not just the words that change, the whole thing is now written out by hand, in this crazy old-time talk. I've had to read it a bunch over the past 3 midnights. First, to make sure it's real, and second, to sort of translate what's being said." Jason shrugged. "The page talks about somebody else too. Not the devil, and not a Huldro. You know who this person is called. Apparently, they're the one running the whole thing, whatever it is. // Over the next week, we planned it out. We found the perfect spot, far away from any windows, any lockers, and the front door. Far away from where the usual monsters lurked. We figured that would give us a head start, and, with any luck, we'd smash through to fresh air before they came for us. There were always random monsters roaming around, like the hall monitor, which was a skeleton with 2 huge swords that would start running after you as soon as it saw you, to name one. But we couldn't control for that. We had a good plan, but we needed luck too. Our plan, after all that time, was really simple. We'd each grab 2 baseball bats from the locker room, go to our designated spot, and start smashing away. I still think it could have worked. With the 2 of us. But that night, I didn't start out alone. I went to the locker room with Jason, and grabbed 2 bats. I was scared as hell, and was running on pure adrenaline, trying not to think at all. I was on my way out when Jason stopped me. "Sure," said Jason, unscrewing the cap. "But not too sharp. What if it comes down to a split second? A monster's coming, and we've got just one more brick to smash. If we get scared, we die. This is all or nothing, man. This is it. We've got to be loose for it, you know." "Okay," I said, feeling the rush. "Let's do this shit." I led the way, my heart pounding in my chest. This is it, I thought. I'm either going to get out of here, or I'll die. I heard one of Jason's bats tap against the floor, and I turned around. He was weaving slightly as he walked. "Shoo," I said. "Come on, man. Got to be quiet." I saw the big hall window up ahead. Once we got past that, we were past the stationary monsters. I heard Jason scream as one of his bats clattered to the ground. I clutched both of my bats and turned to look at what I already knew was happening. The wrangler pulled Jason even closer, and I took a swing with my remaining bat. My weapon was pulled easily from my hands. Then I was alone again. // We could have done it together. I can't do it alone. I've worked it through 1,000 times in my head. I can't do any of it alone anymore. That's why I'm so grateful for you all out there, reading these posts, offering suggestions. Like I said, I've tried most of them, but, going through the comments, I do see a few ideas that I haven't tried yet. Maybe I'll give them a shot tomorrow night. The janitor's closet.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
An email from my daughter's killer, by Doubledore Bastard. As of yesterday, it's been a year since my daughter went missing. There was never any ransom note, no remains discovered, and not an iota of evidence to support the standard theories of foul play and kidnapping. Aside from her absence itself, the whole situation seemed freakishly clean. Her name was Emily. I can say that dreaded was with confidence now. It's a bitter blessing, one that's come at great cost to all of us. Until yesterday, when I got an email from an unknown source. An email claiming to have the truth of what happened to Emily on that terrible day. I won't tell you my name. That's not important right now. What's important is what I've done, and how sorry I am for doing it. I'll be quick and honest. Emily is dead, and I killed her. I would love to tell you it was quick and merciful, but it was neither. She died slowly and terribly. I can't imagine that my initial enjoyment of that fact will serve as any kind of consolation. I've loved Emily for a very long time, in what you might call an improper way. The hardest part was knowing she could never love me back, at least not in the way I loved her, though this wasn't for lack of trying, though. I'd made passes before, just silly attempts really, but she was never receptive to my affection. She was disgusted by me, and that made me feel small and angry. Though I can be thankful of the fact that she never told you about any of it. By the time the fantasy comes to boil, it's too complex to be satisfying on the basis of thought alone. You have to make it into flesh. Warm, satisfying, flesh. And I did, Mrs. Stanfield, I really did. She was on her way home from school when I finally took a chance and made my move. I'd picked out an old, beat-up shack in the woods in advance. I threw down a woolen tarp, and prepared some shackles. I even lit a few candles for romantic effect. More for myself than her, admittedly. For my own pride, I'd like to state that I didn't fuck her before she died. I couldn't bring myself to cross that barrier, knowing her eyes would be on me while it was happening. The thought of it disgusted me. She died, to the best of my knowledge, a virgin. Once I was fully done with her, and the euphoria of it all had passed, it dawned on me what a terrible thing I'd done. My pleasure turned to disgust, and all the sweetness that was inside of me while I was killing her turned sour. I realized that I was not meant to be a murderer, that it didn't suit me, that beyond the temporary pleasure of the act the thought of taking someone's life repulsed me. I was a fantasist who made a terrible, terrible mistake, one that cost the life of a promising young girl. If there is a grand plan out there that we're all a part of, I could feel that what I had done was a deviation from that natural law. I was disgusted at the act, and at myself. This little experiment had backfired on me entirely. I was so out of my depth. Once I'd gotten over the initial wave of fear and panic, I cut up Emily's body into smaller pieces that were easier to carry. I took all the pieces, wrapped them up in the woolen tarp, and burned them with lighter fluid in the woods. After that, I buried the bundle of charred bones and ashes, wishing I could have just forgotten all of it. Killing Emily and doing the things I did to her body were not acts of courage. I've realized that over the past year. They were acts of obsession and cowardice, of a person not strong enough to overcome their darker urges. I've been racked by guilt, surrounded by reminders of the life I've taken and can never give back. That's why I've decided to do the courteous thing and let you know that I've decided to take another life, mine. All I can ever be is a danger to the people around me, a time bomb destined to blow up and hurt another innocent. The only altruistic thing for a person in my position to do is take myself out of the picture. I'm sorry for what I did to Emily. I don't expect for you to forgive me, nor do I think I deserve it. I just hope this gives you some sense of closure and allows you to move on. So, with this in mind, I'll ask you all again, do you believe in coincidences? 10.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
When You Go to Heaven, They Take Your Skin, by Christopher Maxim. I first came to on a gurney in the hospital, rushing through a brightly lit hallway. There was some chatter about my condition, but none of it was promising. A simple but ominous sentiment from a nurse stuck out like a sore thumb and stayed with me until I was sprawled out in the operating room. This doesn't look good. The man smiled. Yes, indeed you are. But fret not, for this is heaven, a paradise of the afterlife. Would you like to enter? I was disappointed that my life was over, but I knew it was inevitable, given the circumstances. At the very least, heaven was seemingly real, and I had been accepted. Before you can enter the world above, an offering is required. I was confused. My face contorted in dismay. My skin. But why? Mostly. I reluctantly allowed him to continue. The pain was severe, but it was nothing compared to the injuries I sustained in the accident. When it was over, I looked down to see a string of unrecognizable characters, along with the numbers that made up my birth date, 03041991. The man then pushed the red door open and stepped aside, motioning for me to enter. I asked one more question before progressing. Are you an angel? What was happening? Was I reliving the pain of my death? My ascent continued, and with it, a deadly realization. I wasn't just burning. With great difficulty, I was able to tilt my head and gaze upon myself. My skin was peeling. I watched in horror as it left my body completely, slipping into the great, white abyss below. All that was left was my muscle tissue. Soon after, the flame subsided, and my motion slowed. Steam surrounded me as I landed in a new location. Though experiencing an insurmountable burning sensation, I was still conscious and aware, alive, if you could even call it that. It was hard to focus on anything but the sharp sting enveloping me, but I was able to comprehend my whereabouts. It was an endless white void. Within it, a plethora of bodies scattered about, skinless humanoid forms writhing in pain, covered only in red, connective tissue, much like my own. They left blood trails as they crawled and slid across the white floor. The grotesque, red face of a person looked up at me and cried. A shiver danced across the length of my spine. What? Who? Who wears it? Before I could receive a response, an electric shock filled my body and jolted me awake. I was once again in the hospital on the operating table, somehow living, albeit barely. I tried to stay afloat, but I wound up drifting away into the bliss of a painless sleep. ////. I awoke in a bed, bandaged up from head to toe. My injuries still stung, but not quite as much as before. A nurse assured me I was okay, and very lucky to be alive. Recalling my experience and unable to see most of my body, I had to ask her. Of course you do. Some of it will be scarred, but rest assured, it's there. I sighed in relief, knowing my trip to heaven was just a strange, medicine and shock-induced nightmare. Thank goodness. It wasn't until a few weeks later, when I was finally able to go home, that I would discover something terrible about my wounds. During my second night home, I woke up in a fit of sleep paralysis, my bedroom soaked in darkness and warmer than usual. There, standing at the foot of my bed, dimly lit by a sliver of moonlight coming through the window, was the tall man from heaven. His plain, stoic expression was broken up only by the occasional grin, a malevolent smile that made my skin crawl beneath the blankets. The spike in adrenaline was not enough for me to break free of my chemical restraints. I was forced to endure his presence and watch in terror as he walked to my side and spoke. He was now close enough for me to feel an intense heat that his body seemed to give off. Heaven truly was a remarkable place. A world where mortals spent their afterlives in peace. Our forms don't bode well in Earth's air. Your skin is the only thing that tempers the reaction, otherwise, we would break down and disintegrate. He spread the piece of flesh onto his arms, creating a thin layer of protective paste. The heat dissipated. We locked eyes, his head tilting slowly in observation as I futilely attempted to scream. His face lowered to meet mine. Tremors erupted throughout my body. Still, I could not move. Then, suddenly, he vanished in a puff of smoke, leaving me alone in the darkness. Once the man disappeared, I was able to move again. I felt my wrist, and it was fine. No missing skin. However disturbing this incident was, I knew it had to be a remnant of my dream from the hospital. A side effect of the trauma I suffered. Nothing more than a recurring, albeit terrifying nightmare. Regardless of this explanation, I was unable to sleep until daybreak. I chalked this up to being another troubling facet of my psyche, post-car crash. It was clear at this point that I was severely troubled. I started entertaining the idea of seeking professional help in the form of a psychologist. The next night, however, disproved all previous theories about my bizarre state of affairs. Upon peeling back the bandages on my arm to bathe for the first time, I saw it. There were scars in odd, unrecognizable shapes, as well as a familiar numeric sequence.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I have noticed that whenever I would come to visit him, he would drop his usual gloomy and grim demeanor and take on a more lively personality. I've grown very fond of him over these last few days. He's a huge motivation for me to keep doing what I'm doing, and even though he keeps denying that there's a way of saving him, I've made it clear that I won't stop trying. I brought him some candy, as always, and a book for him to entertain himself. "You're spoiling me," he said with a grin as he unwrapped a piece of bubblegum. "No, but seriously, thanks. You don't always have to bring me stuff though, you know. I appreciate the company most." Nathan might be disheveled and smelly due to him being forced to stay on the carriage, but it doesn't obscure his good looks. He is very handsome in a fragile, soft way. I know it sounds stupid, but I cannot stop comparing his eyes to that of a cow. They look so gentle and soulful. Something about him makes me feel like if I touch him, he might shatter like a piece of very fine, thin glass. He's the kind of person one cannot help but feel protective of. There's no use in denying it. He leaned back in his seat and sighed deeply. If you'd asked me before this happened, I would have probably said there was no need to be worried. But, it happened and I'm stuck here. We both know what he did to me. I don't know him anymore. Maybe I never did. I can't tell if he's gonna try and do something to you, but it's definitely possible. Don't be like me and let your guard down. Nathan looked a bit confused but eventually nodded. He fondled the bay leaves for a bit, turning the twig to either side as if to study it. When he was done, he focused on the nail, pinching himself with it a couple times before putting it aside to examine the silver. "They're pretty," he said, holding up the earrings. "They look like tiny leaves. That's cute. Did any of these hurt you in any way?" I offered. No, they're fine," I muttered. This didn't make any sense. My manager opened only seconds after me ringing the doorbell, almost like he had been standing right behind the door, waiting for me to arrive. He was looking less uptight than usual. Maybe the alcohol he had quite obviously already been consuming prior to my arrival had made him loosen up a bit, but he actually greeted me with a smile. "I can't believe you actually came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "I thought you'd stand me up, I really did." "I'm a lady of honor," I replied. "I keep my promises." "You'll only need one for yourself," I stated, producing the plastic cup from my bag. "So, why am I here, exactly?" I inquired. 6 inches, Dale suddenly said before taking a sip of his whiskey. It took me a while to catch on. "Dude, I wasn't gonna ask that and you know it," I hissed. "How much did you drink already?" "Good question," my manager muttered. "Now, to be honest, I don't know, but there's an empty wine bottle in the trash, so that should tell you quite a lot." "My turn." He thought for a few seconds before asking, "Do you like Nathan?" "Yes," I replied, nodding. "Yeah, right. Who doesn't? Okay, should we get started for real then?" I nodded once again and Dale motioned for me to begin. "Have you in the past or at any given point in time tried to poison me or succeeded in an attempt to do so?" I was a bit taken aback, but also relieved. "I guess I really can't hold my liquor." Swallowing my apprehension, I uttered, "Okay, your turn." "To check if you know." "My turn. Why do you have the words no return tattooed on your back?" I shot him a weird look, but before I could ask how he knew of my tattoo, he added, "I found an older photo of you in a bikini in a participation register for a swimming contest. I research all of my employees' backgrounds extensively. So." I sighed. "It's a long story. The night's young and I've got time, don't make up excuses." "Okay then, next one. What's stopping you from telling me these things?" "You haven't," Dale muttered sternly. I ignored him. "So. Next one. How many people have you turned into pretenders already?" I raised a brow. I had not expected that. However, Dale wasn't done yet. If you were to ask me how many got turned by the ones before me, the answer would be a different one. I nodded. "I did," I answered in a quiet voice. Dale let go of a soft sigh and for a split second, he looked like he was going to say something, but he simply motioned for me to take my turn. Dale shook his head and took a sip of his whiskey. "Can't tell," he mouthed. "If I were you," he began, leaning forward and looking me in the eyes, "I'd pray it never comes to that. To be honest, I'd never thought you'd find out about it at all. Snoop around the rest of the park as much as you want, but stay the fuck away from that door. It's for your own good." In a lighter tone, he added, "Also, that was my turn just now. Let's see, is there a person in the park you really care about?" "What about him?" "Dang it, we just wasted one question each," Dale groaned in frustration. "This is hard when you're tipsy." "Yeah, you're right. What I wanted to ask was, do you care about him?" I frowned. Weird thing to ask. "Yeah, sure I do. But not any more than for the other pretenders." "No. I have no reason to." "Yeah, whatever man. That's another question gone, by the way, so it's my turn. Why do you never talk to Nathan? He deserves closure in my opinion." I didn't know how to answer. I instinctively remembered the strange incident yesterday and how for a second, the reflection in that bathroom mirror had not felt like my own. "You're hesitating," Dale remarked. It usually feels like mine, but yesterday, it was different for a moment, I finally replied. My manager nodded. He reached out to grab the bottle, but I quickly pulled it away from him. Let's take it slow for now, I told him, and to my surprise, he listened and sat back. Why are you asking me these weird questions? I inquired. For the first time since I had met him, Dale gave me a genuinely reassuring smile. That depends. But I'll try my best to keep you, the way you are right now. Feel free to keep on investigating. I can assure you it's got little to do with it. He closed his eyes, taking some time to think. Do you have a history of getting screwed over by people, or is this the first time? He suddenly asked very bluntly. Dale shook his head. Never mind, I shouldn't have asked that. It's still my turn, I think. Could you give Nathan something from me? It's his plushie. He's had it since he was a kid and it's still lying around here. I want him to have it back. Maybe it'll help him feel less lonely, at the very least, it'll stop staring at me with its hateful, accusing little eyes. Why are you helping me all of a sudden? Isn't it obvious? It's about Nathan. As unlikely as it seems, you might find a way to release him. After all, you did find out about the restroom. Who knows what you can do? I'm unable to help in any way. As I said, stuff will happen if I try. But you're not bound by anything. I watch him, and I see you when you come to visit him. Whatever it is you're doing, I think it's working. At least one thing's for sure. The more you know, the more confident you are that there's a way of saving him, and this confidence is what makes him happy. So please, for the love of God, keep it up. This had caught me off guard. I stared at him with wide, incredulous eyes. How do I know I can trust you? We who now claim ownership of this land are aware of and willing to pay the price. What does that mean? Suddenly, I noticed something weird. Why are we even playing this game? I mean, you could just answer my questions the normal way. Dale gave me a thin smile. Iron, laurel, silver, sage, salt, and red verbena. Those are your best friends. He finally looked up at me and asked in a slow, empty tone. Do you know that you're being watched whenever you're at the park? I didn't know how to respond. I stared at him in shock and confusion before finally regaining my composure. Surely, being watched was not the most absurd thing out of everything I knew happened around the park. So why was I so unsettled by that thought? I see, Dale finally said. My reaction had apparently been enough of an answer. Suddenly, he grew very silent. His expression darkened. He murmured something about excusing himself to go to the bathroom. I merely nodded and stayed in my seat. What did you do? I shouted, rushing up to him and heaving him to his feet. He was heavy and I had trouble holding him upright, but at least he didn't fight it. Holy shit. Fuck. Where's your car keys? We need to get you to a hospital. I complied and carefully walked him over to the couch. He slowly lowered himself down on it. What the hell was that just now? I hissed. My hands were coated in his blood and I was shaking. I hated Dale a little for being so calm. My name is Dale. He looked up at me with glazed, hooded eyes. In case I forget, he mouthed. The rest of the night passed in a bit of a daze. I found that the bullet in fact wasn't stuck in his arm, for it had only grazed him. I later discovered it stuck in one of the bathroom walls. He told me where I could find his first aid kit and I spent about 15 minutes carefully bandaging his arm. When I asked him why he had wounded himself, he told me he didn't know. Apparently he had lost control over his body in front of the mirror for a second, and the next thing he had known was that he had a bullet wound in his arm, presumably having acquired the gun from its usual spot in the dresser outside the bathroom door. He seemed disturbingly unfazed by this, and when I asked him why, he said something about how this happened quite a lot amongst members of his family. He had returned to his quiet former self, the talkative Dale from earlier having vanished. I asked if it was upper management who did this to him, but he just chuckled dryly without giving any definitive answer. I urged him to at least see a doctor in the morning, to which he thankfully, albeit reluctantly, complied. I really hope he's going to be alright until then. In hindsight, I would have loved to ask Dale so many other questions. It feels just like taking a test, the best things always coming to mind when it's already over. Maybe I'll get another chance to ask him these things on a different occasion. Then again, who knows if he'll answer. Either way, I returned home with a borrowed gun, a stork plushie, and the mysterious ornate revolver. I think I've never gotten this much out of any of my interactions with my manager before. Part 17, Iron. Part 18, Fired.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
Dad was right, in a way. It wasn't like I was selling myself on street corners for meth or anything. There were definitely worse things than eating myself sick constantly. What had started as comfort eating to deal with a combination of poor self-esteem and bullying slowly morphed into a need, a craving, an itch I couldn't quite scratch. It got embarrassing fast. I tried to be discreet, eating normal portions in front of others, but then gorging myself behind closed doors until I felt like I would vomit. I couldn't look in a mirror without wanting to cry. My face was becoming rounder, my clothes became harder to pull on, tighter, and my sisters started asking if I was retaining water. That was their idea of tact. Mom was even more blunt. Kelly and Jasmine feigned interest in their cereal, but I could see their amused smirks. I swallowed back tears and shrugged. I'd never been thin, something Mom prioritized, and it was a sore point between us. It didn't matter what she tried, what she made me do, I could just never get down to the same ideal size that she and my sisters were. Then what are you going to do about it? I've been trying, Mom. Sorry. I did run, all the way up to my room, where I locked myself in and dug out the stash of snacks I kept hidden in the back of my closet. I sat on my floor and tried to drown out Mom's cold, angry words with the loud crunch of chips and candy, but it only made them louder. I caught sight of myself in the mirror hanging on the back of my door, and I paused, my hand still in the bag of mini Snickers. Mom was right, I was a pig, gross, unlovable, ugly. How lucky was I, then, when she told me a few days later that she had a solution. When I tried to recruit Dad to my side later that night, he sat me down and let me cry against his shoulder. He knew about how strained my relationship was with my mom and he sympathized, but he was a pushover. He couldn't stand up to her any more than I could. No, she doesn't. Your mom loves you, that's why she cares so much about your weight. She wants you to be healthy. Natalie. The morning I left for camp, Mom let me eat whatever I wanted for breakfast. She considered it a last meal of sorts. Despite the queasy knots in my stomach, I managed to scarf down French toast, bacon, sausage, eggs, and a bowl full of strawberries. Mom forced a smile, although I could tell she was repulsed. She gave me a pat on the shoulder as I headed out to the car with Dad. The drive upstate was long and quiet. Dad made a few attempts at conversation, but I didn't want to talk. I just wanted to get it over with. The camp was beautiful, I admitted grudgingly to myself as we pulled up. A lake sparkled invitingly from behind a row of log cabins, neat paths wound off into the trees, and colorful flags and banners had been erected all around, welcoming the newest campers to their home for the next month and a half. As soon as we'd parked, a bright, overly bubbly woman practically pulled me from the car into a hug. Dad gave me a tight hug and whispered, "If it's horrible, call me. I'll come get you." "Thanks," I said, but I knew he wouldn't. I was assigned a bunk and given just enough time to unpack before they ushered us into a large dining hall. I was surrounded by other girls, all of whom looked as excited as I was about being there, and I felt the familiar twinge of nerves that set in whenever I was faced with a new situation. I wanted nothing more than to go home, curl up in my favorite pajamas, and eat. My stomach rumbled in agreement. By the time dinner rolled around, I'd become friendly with a couple of girls from my cabin and was starting to think that, maybe, camp wouldn't be so horrible after all. We were given a disappointingly small portion of fish and rice to eat and, halfway through, I noticed that I was unusually sleepy. It had been a long, stressful day, so I didn't think much of it and was happy when they gave us permission to return to our cabins. The other girls seemed to be similarly worn out and, sluggishly, we all went back to our bunks and collapsed into bed. I fell asleep the moment my head hit the pillow. Huh. I pried open one eye and had to blink the room into focus. My head felt like it had been stuffed with cotton, making it hard to piece thoughts together. My arms were stretched uncomfortably towards the headboard, but when I tried to move them, cold metal bit into my wrists. I shifted, craning my neck to look up, and it took a long minute of staring to figure out what exactly I was seeing. A pair of handcuffs. Someone had cuffed me to the bed. I blinked dumbly, trying to process what this could mean in a mind still muddied with sleep. Around me, I heard similarly confused murmurs and the curious tugging of handcuffs. "What's the matter?" she asked, looking between us with wide eyes. "Help us." Instead of becoming more concerned at learning our plight, she relaxed, smiling. There was a collective demand to know why. "To start you on your journey to a healthier, happier you. You'll see, girls, it's all part of the plan." Somehow, that didn't help. We shouted at her to unlock us, but she just shook her head, her hands on her hips, smiling all the while. "Ah, listen to all of you. It's only day one and you're complaining already. TSK TSK. I have to go to the bathroom," Morgan said pleadingly. What? This is kidnapping." I perked up slightly and saw that Gloria had done the same. We'd talked briefly about overpowering Ashley and making a run for it the moment she freed us. Maybe this would be our chance. That hope was washed away with the first spray from Ashley's hose, which I hadn't seen tucked discreetly behind her back. I gasped and sputtered under the wave of icy water that was spread liberally around the cabin, soaking all of us equally. She beamed at us and, as she and Ashley each pulled on a pair of rubber gloves, said, "Hi, gals, I'm Tara. I'm part of the kitchen staff here. I just know you guys must be starved. I mean, have any of you had to go this long without eating before?" "Oh, this little piggy isn't hungry." Tara pouted. "What do you think, Ash? Are any of them?" "Let's find out." "Wow. What a great first day." Ashley said once they'd finished, "You guys are already learning to listen to your bodies, eating only when you're truly hungry. I'm so proud. Okay, I want you all to really think about how much you accomplished today. Me and Tara are going to take your food back to the kitchen, but don't worry. We'll bring it back tomorrow. Waste not, want not, right?" They laughed and covered the bin back up before heading towards the cabin door. As she left, Ashley half turned one more time. "Congratulations, ladies, you're all on your way to a healthier, happier you." The door shut loudly behind them, leaving us wet, hungry, and, for the first time, more than a little afraid. Part 2.
Something still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
The little girl I'm babysitting just broke me emotionally. Her family doesn't care about her condition, so I'm venting about it online instead, by lighting nations. Elaborate. We've been having trouble retaining help, Mr. Jacobs. Childminders are in rare supply these days. She could say that again. Demand had swelled these past months, to the point romance-starved parents had begun paying double the standard rate for sitters. No. In fact, if you're not up to the task, perhaps I should recruit a candidate with a touch more grit. You'd be surprised. I followed her through a musty corridor lined with doors, past the occasional ceramic lamp. The bottom of the beige wallpaper appeared faded, shiny in places, as though an army of snails had been racing back and forth. As we walked, a ceiling bulb twitched. At the foot of a sprawling staircase by the front entrance, she stopped and faced me. Should that happen, there's a generator in the basement, although it requires a manual start. She gestured toward a duffel bag draped over the fancy banister. The instructions are in there, along with a flashlight. The entrance is beneath the staircase. Ms. Wilson grabbed an umbrella from a stand beside the huge, double doors. Sienna's in her playroom. Take a right at the top of the stairs, third door on your left. Keep her engaged and out of mischief until I return, understood? Understood. A shriveled digit stabbed the air for emphasis. Understood. No response. I tried again, harder. Still nothing. Maybe Sienna was deaf. "RAWR," shouted a tiny voice. "You must be Sienna," I said, chuckling. "Well, Sienna, I'm afraid we've got a serious problem. Your grandma left without telling me your favorite game. I fished Monopoly and Connect 4 out of my satchel. What do you like most?" "You don't have a favorite game. What about your friends? What do you play with them?" As she stared at the floor, eyes narrow, it occurred to me friends must be hard to come by in the middle of Nowheresville. After losing a round on the very first block, the little brat folded her arms and said, "Jenga's stupid." 30 minutes later, I deliberately lost at checkers so I could excuse myself to the bathroom. Oh crap, did Sienna suffer from seizures? Narcolepsy? Her skull might have just cracked open like an egg. The nearest hospital was a 2-hour drive away. Not to mention the fact my phone lost signal 6 miles out from this grandiose estate. Before I could bolt back across the hall, light shades and lamp sprung back to life. I burst through the door only to discover Sienna standing patiently beside the table. A cursory scan of the space didn't reveal any overturned cabinets or fallen chests. Halfway across the room, my foot skidded in a clear puddle spreading itself across the wooden floorboards. My arms windmilled as I bit down on a swear. Oh, they do that sometimes. What are we playing next? How about hide and seek? After making her swear she'd stay indoors, I said, "All right, you go, I'll count to 50. "Sienna, game's over," I yelled. Come out wherever you are." From the far end of a claustrophobic hallway, metal pans drum rolled along the floor and then a door slammed hard enough to make glasses rattle. Had Sienna fallen? In the kitchen, utensils lay scattered about here and there. Muffled sounds came through a heavy wooden door beyond the fridge. The door opened at a push. Beyond it lay a pantry larger than my apartment containing multiple rows of freestanding shelves crammed with food. "Sienna? You in here?" As I rounded the shelf, words caught in my throat, any assumptions it might have been her quickly melting away. Directly ahead of me, long, dark appendages reached out and grasped objects from the very top shelf, a height of nearly 8 feet. The silhouette of a nightmarish, hulking frame almost occupied the full width of the aisle. My column of light remained trained on the floor, because to look directly at it would be too terrible a thing. Half choking on my own heart, I quickly retreated into a shelf. For a long and breathless moment glass jars chattered away, then a container of pickles plummeted onto the floor and exploded beside my feet. I clawed my way forward. Those double doors refused to budge, even after several shoulder charges. I pulled back the curtain covering the side window, revealing more iron bars. There was no way out. I'd become a cow in an abattoir. At the next shriek, my back pressed flat against the entranceway. But then, beyond the arched window above the stairs, a series of lighting twigs stroked out of the clouds. In the brief moment that followed, I glimpsed a creature with sinusy gray-orange skin not unlike an octopus and a pear-shaped body, roughly my chest height. There were 6 tentacles, 4 along the bottom, 2 in place of arms. Long, dark hair sprouted from the head, held together by a golden clip, and somehow the beast had been wrangled haphazardly into a blouse covered with cartoon fish, more out of place than an alligator in a wedding dress. As the darkness evaporated, the skin became alive with movement, shifting, writhing, losing both color and gloss as it deflated like a released balloon. Tentacles fused together while that endless cavern of a jaw sealed itself shut. Just then, the lightning storm ended. Sienna's body swelled as if being puffed up, her legs separating into 4 tentacles which slumped onto the floor with slimy thwops. Another coiled around my forearm, sickeningly wet. Before I could react, a slanted shaft of moonlight stabbed into the hall through the window above the stairs, and the tentacle uncurled. The moon had just emerged from behind purple-black storm clouds. I toppled backward, onto the floor, and scrambled away, yelping as something jabbed me in the side, the flashlight. "Stay away from me," I whimpered at an advancing Sienna. You're a fucking monster." The youth said, "No, we're not playing fucking monsters, we're playing hide and seek, remember?" She only became a monster in the dark. I fumbled for the flashlight, heart slamming against my ribcage, and pointed the beam forward a split second before Mr. Moon said goodnight. She insisted I count properly before attempting to scurry off, but by slipping into the dark she'd transform again. Desperate to appease her, I screamed, "Wait! I've got a better game." Okay, I said, gently. "Then let's go back to your room and play Jenga." "No. Please." "I know, I'll run, and you have to catch me." "No. Please no." I tailed her into a lounge, where she rolled over sofas and scurried beneath tables on her hand and knees. Anytime she escaped, the beam shriek spread throughout the mansion, and I furiously attempted to pin her down again, begging her to keep still all the while. Up the steps, down a maze of halls, over carpets and groany floorboards, bashing my shin against elegant antique French desks, terrified of getting too close while simultaneously maintaining a safe buffer zone. Just when I thought the situation couldn't get any worse, the flashlight sputtered. Ms. Wilson hadn't even left a fresh set of batteries. How much longer could these ones chug along for? Let her run amok up there while. Behind me, vases smashed and lampshades got set swinging. Within seconds slithers filled the claustrophobic corridor. I angled the light at my pursuer, who morphed moments before crashing into my chest. She stepped away, one hand on her hip, the other wagging a finger in the air. "Hey, you're supposed to chase me." On unsteady legs I backstepped while she stomped her foot, fists clenched. "You don't want to play with me, do you? You're only saying that because you don't want to play anymore. You're just like all the others." That's not, others. I couldn't shake her loose but also couldn't let her out of my sight. I needed some way of making her stand absolutely. How do we play? Okay, whenever I'm looking at you, you have to stand absolutely still. Got it. Sienna froze, already transforming back. As tentacles shifted into legs and arms, she shivered forward a few inches. After sidestepping toward the top of the staircase, I made another desperate break for safety, and, as the steps flew beneath my feet, the creature burst from the landing. Did not. What the hell is that? I roared, and pointed past her shoulder. 20 steps. Each blink of the flashlight took longer and longer. There wasn't much juice left. The recoil rope lay on the far side of the device, but before I could reach it, the batteries went to that big power station in the sky, plunging the basement into a sea of darkness. Immediately I rounded the generator and tugged the cord, but the engine refused the kiss of life. Oh shit. Before I could mount another attempt, a tentacle coiled around my left foot, so tight the bones nearly crunched. Another trapped my left hand, flexing and writhing, and then both hoisted me, effortlessly, up into the air. As I collided with the ceiling once, twice, plaster cascaded down. My stomach somersaulted like it would on a roller coaster. Tentacles whipped me back and forth before maneuvering me above an expanding, hungry mouth. A tongue slipped out of that cavern, brown and glistening and obscene, tapered into a sharp point. Surely, she didn't mean. Put me down. Now. I heard myself say. I'm warning you, Sienna. Put me down or we won't play any more games for the rest of the night. Standing before it, my back straight, I said, now don't move while I fix this generator. Understood? I took the inaction as a yes. As I collapsed onto the floor, my breaths coming in shallow gulps, a urine stain spread along my trouser leg. 5 seconds later, a grinning Sienna leaned into my window of vision, poked me in the forehead, and said, I win. Can we play again? When Ms. Wilson returned, her granddaughter was under a dining table. Chairs had been tied around the outside, held together by rope. What's all this mess? Hi Grandma, we're playing animals at the zoo. I'm a lion, roar. Hunched behind a dresser on its side, I clutched both a mop and a large kitchen knife. Ms. Wilson gave me a disapproving stare before untying the closest chair. Did you have a good time? She asked Sienna, who crawled out from her enclosure. All right dear, why don't you go upstairs and get ready for bed? I'll be along shortly to read you a story. Okay. Sienna ran over and threw her arms around my waist. Can Mark come back and play again sometime? She asked Ms. Wilson. Shivers raced along my spine at this suggestion. We'll see. So Mr. Jacobs, I presume you had an eventful evening? I said nothing. Again, zilch. I shook my head, furiously. It took me almost a minute to digest the number she'd written down. I held the bill with a sense of awe, my jaw hanging open.
You're still tuned to HorrorSlop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
Some say I'm one of the only ones left from the Raleigh case. Others want interviews. There was even a true crime channel trying to dramatize everything with terrible actors and suspense music on loop, a web series or something like that. I'll say it up front, if you're wondering which series or where to find the info, well, the first video is already off YouTube, they deleted everything 2 days ago. They say it was due to pressure from the family. Others feed conspiracies about what the government might be hiding. And before anyone who saw any of the content asks, yes. The train is real, but it doesn't start with it. My whole role in this delicate plot began when I moved back to my hometown. It was kind of a cowardly decision, I admit. I hid behind an acceptable reason. I was hired to restore the murals at St. Luke's Chapel, down in the Rail District. Sacred painting, something I've done for years and that many people assume requires some kind of faith. But I like the silence that hangs between the stone walls, the old paint creaking on the brush, the smell of incense that never seems to leave the floor. I like the illusion of eternity. Regional tournament, Connor's team. Connors, I muttered to myself. No, it can't be. Of course he was still around. But as a coach. Well, he didn't have siblings or any relatives to share that last name with, so it was either that or a new resident totally unrelated to my past, and honestly, no one moves to this godforsaken place. I don't know what came over me. Maybe just curiosity. Maybe some instinctive need to see something that was still familiar. I went to the game that night. I stayed in the back of the bleachers, near the metal fence, holding a warm Coke and trying to look casual. Caleb Morgan. That you? He pulled me into a hug, lifting me off the ground. Look who decided to rise from the dead. I nodded, a bit embarrassed. Then we went to the tech school parking lot to have a beer on the hood of his stylish EcoSport. They paid well. Silence. Come on, Jake, you know I don't hold grudges. That was young stuff. It's all good now. Caleb, Ben's missing. It's been months since anyone's seen him. Is he still living around here? Same place as always. Wanna see him? Wes showed up with the face of someone who hasn't slept in days. Army t-shirt, sunken eyes, messy hair. When he saw me, he paused for a second. Then smiled a smile that almost hurt his cheeks. That's becoming a catchphrase, I muttered, and he laughed. Wes looked at me, that gleam in his eyes wasn't just excitement. It was faith. The kind of faith that doesn't need to convince anyone. He was trying to track the train. Map the times, the sounds. The sequence. Like a stop pattern. He was piecing things together, Caleb. And I think he found the boarding point. Tomorrow, Wes said, I want to take you there. It's not far. But you need to see it with your own eyes. And, he paused, almost embarrassed, maybe hear it too. By late afternoon, we met at the old station. A rusted structure, partially swallowed by vegetation. Part of the platform had collapsed years ago, and the upper sign no longer had letters, just holes where something like, District A Station, used to be. No one remembered anymore. Wes was already there, with his backpack, the same one as always, which made me wonder how it was still standing after over a decade, and a folder stuffed with crumpled papers. He was crouched near the tracks, recorder running. When he saw us, he stood. He came here. I'm sure of it. There are footprints. Sometimes fresh. Sometimes just a mark in the dust. Wes hesitated. And you? He just looked at me. Wes was about to answer when we heard footsteps coming from the blind side of the station. The vegetation rustled slightly, and Amy appeared, slowly. For a moment, no one said anything. And even though we were outdoors, surrounded by grass and metal, her presence brought a deathly, sterile silence. She wore a thin coat, far too big for her, like time had shrunk someone who once took up more space in the world. Even so, she was as beautiful as I remembered, if not more, her reddish-brown hair down to her shoulders, dark, piercing eyes staring at us, heavy with dark circles against her pale skin. "This was his," she said, holding out the envelope. No one moved at first. Then Wes stepped forward and took it carefully. "Did you open it?" he asked. I tried. But, it always felt wrong. She looked around. "He wanted us to come back here. That I know. I just don't understand why." I recognized Ben's handwriting instantly. Jake scoffed, running his hand over his face. "This looks like some ritual crap, man. Like, sick stuff." Wes stared at the pages like he was trying to remember something. Amy stepped back. "I don't know if I want to keep going with this. I shouldn't have come." And then she left. Jake crossed his arms. "This is giving me a bad feeling, man." "I don't know," I replied, "but I know that if I leave now, I won't sleep tonight. Maybe not the next either." "Told you he'd be in. Boarding point shows up at midnight, sir," and gave me an ironic bow. He hesitated. Looked away. A silence. And there was something else. "What?" He looked back up, staring into my eyes, more serious than ever. "I think I saw someone inside one of the cars. Standing still. Staring at me." It was already night when I got back to the chapel. The air was dense, stifling, even a bit warm for that time of year. I locked the door, dropped my things on the floor, and sat for a few minutes on the dusty altar, trying to gather my thoughts. But they wouldn't gather. They just spun around a single point, the note on the paper. I went back inside. Locked up. Stood still for a few seconds, listening. Nothing. "Midnight, obviously," Wes replied. The whole city felt suspended. No wind, no insects, no sound coming from anywhere. Just the three of us, lit by a flashlight Wes had strapped to a makeshift tripod made out of broken chair legs. Midnight came. Nothing. And then, it happened. No warning. No rumble. The train just appeared. Not arriving from afar, not emerging from the horizon, it was simply there. A long, black train with darkened windows, metal stained by time, just, existing less than 5 meters from us. I felt the gust of air hit me like a punch to the chest. The sound was deafening, like a living machine groaning, and the headlight, if it even was a light, looked more like a white hole, leaking pressure. I had stepped down earlier to snap a few aesthetic shots for inspiration, figuring midnight had already passed and I didn't want the night to be a waste. Even if the train did show up, I thought I'd have enough time and space to run. But suddenly the train was barreling right at me. A steel monster, absurd, aimless, just raw magnitude, and a scream that seemed to come from inside my head. Jake saved me. He grabbed my collar and yanked me back onto the platform with a strength I'd never seen in him. I hit the ground, elbow throbbing and heart trying to leap from my throat. The train thundered past us, car after car, with no end in sight. It wasn't just dragging metal, it was warping time itself. The windows, my God. Some were fogged up. Others were covered in something dark. And one of them, just a few feet from me, revealed a figure. Still. Seated. Staring right at me. Wes stared at the recorder. Hit stop. took 2 steps back and sat down. I couldn't speak. The sound still echoed not in my ears, but in my chest. "No one's getting in yet," I said. My voice came out hoarse. "We need to think." "No, I just don't think it's smart to jump on ghost trains, that's all. Think about Ben." Something behind me. I turned slowly, praying to see nothing. A child. Standing in the street. Again. Wearing a train conductor's outfit, hat crooked. Closer this time, maybe 10 meters away. He took 1 step. Then another. His face. "All aboard. All aboard." I approached the small glass window. The child stood in the street, staring. Not blinking. Not moving. Its smile glowed with a fiery hue, and as if that wasn't enough to unhinge me, it spoke, in a deep, doubled voice. "At the next station, Caleb." It vanished with a pop of air and a stench of spoiled meat and hot iron.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
I'm a lifeguard for a pool that is only open at night. I was sworn to keep its secrets, but I just can't take it anymore, by Darkly Gathers. Sometimes as I'm walking through one such tunnel in my shorts, sandals and lifeguard shirt, I'll catch a glimpse of someone outside, shivering through their coats in the snow, and I can't help but feel relieved to be on this side of the glass. My boss is an eccentric lady. The manager. She laughs and smiles a lot, but damn if she doesn't always look so tired. It's like I can see the stress aging her in actual, real time. She needs to take it a little easier, is what I think. We're just leisure facility workers, after all. I can't quite put my finger on it, but something suddenly changes. The atmosphere becomes a little more strained. A little more tense. I shift uncomfortably. Kate, my boss, glances up from the desk and over my shoulder. I turn around to see one of my colleagues behind me through the open doorway. Nice guy. He's been here longer than me, I think. But the moment my eyes meet his, he turns away, and heads off and away out of sight. And number X200B. I look back to Kate and the silence stretches on. "Ah, okay," I reply, eyebrows raised. She rubs her wrist absent-mindedly, running a thumb over the V she has tattooed there as she looks at the wall in thought. "We run night sessions here sometimes. Did you know that?" she says, still not looking directly at me. And number X200B. She rises from her chair. "Come with me, please." Silently I stand, and I follow on beside her as we walk through the complex. Nothing wrong with the pool itself, it's just an unusual shape and a little further out of the way than the other 3. Kate leads me through one of the doors at the back, past steaming pipes and whirring filters. Round a corner we go, beneath a blinking emergency exit sign, and I find myself starting to get a little anxious. My gut is telling me something, but I don't know how to respond. A pool that I didn't know about until just now. For a session I didn't know even existed. Kate says nothing. And we find ourselves at the top of a tiled staircase. One that leads down, and down into the humid gloom. Kate wavers on the top step. She grips tight to the metal rail, then, with a slow sigh, she descends, and against my better judgment, I follow. And number X200B. Down, into the dark. And number X200B. Kate's sandals clack against the tile as we go down, and mine echoes softly behind as I follow. "This is pretty creepy, you know," I say with a weak chuckle, but again I receive no reply. My breathing becomes shallow. "Kate," I say, to nothing. "Goddammit. Kate." "Jesus," I murmur in disbelief, stepping forwards, and together with Kate we head through into this secretive, underground pool. A deep, soft humming sound rumbles overhead through the pipework. Water drips from somewhere unseen. I look around and try to take it all in. There stands a lone lifeguard chair by the edge of the pool. There are some lockers against one wall. And as for the pool itself, Kate grabs me suddenly by the shoulders and I swear in alarm, heart pounding in fear. "Wait, that's it. You want me down here right now? Alone?" Kate looks away and wipes her eyes. She starts to walk back to the arch. She shoots a look back at me over her shoulder. Her expression makes it very clear that this is no joke. Where the fuck do those even lead? I wonder aloud. I look over to the lifeguard chair. A still and silent sentinel above the dark water, and I glance to my watch. 2 hours. She wants you down here for 2 hours. This is crazy. This must be a joke, surely. I should just go back upstairs and refuse. But I don't. Something about Kate's manner really frightened me. So I'll just do it this once, see what the big deal is, and then make a decision from there. The water churns, the humidity pinpricks my skin with sweat, and I watch. And number X200B. / Nothing happens, by the way. Not this first time. I start to feel a little queasy as the hours draw to a close, but I put that down to just a little dehydration. Kate is gone by the time I return upstairs and through the complex to her office, so I simply go home, and bring it up with her the following day. "Dan. I'm not going to discuss this with you again. I'm sorry but this is just the way it is. Kate, look, it creeps me out, alright, I don't dash. You will go down again." "No, I won't." "Yes," she shouts, "you will," slamming a hand down onto her desk, and silence falls in the immediate area. She pauses, then bursts into tears with her face in her hands. I don't bother saying anything further. I just walk out. What is there to say? And number X200B. I speak to one of my colleagues a little later that day. Guy called Rex. I ask him about the pool, and if he has any answers for me. "You just have to do it," he mutters. Eyes downcast. "If you don't then it'll fall to somebody else, right? How long has Francesca been working here? You like her, right? How long she been here now, man?" 11 months. "Yeah, that's right." And number X200B. I scratch my arm in thought. Paused. Considering. "You're joking, right?" Comes the rebuttal. "It's 2 hours of sitting on your ass. 2 hours and you get to keep one of the best jobs you've ever had. You like it here. You've just been given a raise. It's 2 hours in a red room. Man up, and get the fuck down." Fine. I think to myself, steadily descending the tiled stairs. But there's something else going on here. Something not right. And I'll find out what it is. Kate barely looks me in the eye these days. Something's seriously up with her. And it's scaring me. And the lifeguard chair, waiting patiently for my arrival. I head over and climb on up. Sitting with a small sigh and my hands clasped, I look out over the face of the water. And number X200B. Dark, black. It swallows the feeble red light and softly churns, demanding more, perhaps. And number X200B. Movement. And number X200B. I am shocked from my careless dozing by what I assume to be movement in the water. In a panic I grip the sides of the chair and lean forwards, eyes wide and staring at the very center of the pool. My heart beats suddenly rapid and painful. I wait, and I watch. Waiting for confirmation of what it is that I saw, hoping beyond hope that it was nothing more than my imagination. It's subtle, but it's there. And number X200B. But as if in response to this thought the splash comes again, and I watch in cold horror as the water rises, and steam drifts from the pool's surface. A long, dark shape slithers its way through the red shadow towards me, then slinks back down below and into the deep. Fuck this. What the hell is this, Kate? I shout at her. Tell me what the fuck is going on. You think I wanted this? She mutters in a low voice, leaning forwards. She doesn't seem surprised by my outburst in the slightest. You think I wanted to be a part of this hell, Dan? She scratches at the V tattoo she has on her wrist. We do our duty. As lifeguards. As lifeguards. I allow myself a laugh and throw out my hands. This is insane. Tell me, Kate, what exactly is in the pool below our complex? She looks at me. Then she looks at her watch. You left your position early, she says. No one is watching the pool. No one is watching the dash. I begin, incredulous, then I stop, close my eyes, and take a breath. Kate, I say to her. I quit. And without another word I turn and stride from her office. I leave the complex behind, shivering in the snow, and despite how much I used to love my job, I intend never to return. That night I suffer from terrible, terrible nightmares. I lose count of how many times I awake during the night, and by 5 a.m. I am too terrified to return to sleep. The next night they come back, renewed. And when I can take it no more I am right back in Kate's office. Disheveled and desperate, and I ask her. How do I make them stop? How do I stop the dreams? She stands and steps over to me. She draws me into a hug. / So I return to my job. Sometimes the nights are entirely uneventful. And sometimes I see shapes slithering round in the darkness, disrupting the pool's surface, and my greatest fear remains that one day one of the things in the water is going to clamber up onto the tile, and I will not be able to summon the Constitution to escape. But I can handle that. I can deal with it. They are only as heavy as is needed, I suppose, to remind me to do my duty. To do my job. And number X200B. Week after week. And number X200B. And number X200B. It begins as any other. I am uncomfortable and scared as I sit in my chair. As I watch the water quietly churn and listen to the pipes above me hiss and rumble. And that's when I see him. That's when I see the boy. A kid. A human boy just drifting through one of the tunnels. Down one of the rivers and into the center of the pool, paddling and pulled along by an impossible current, one that I cannot see. I cannot believe what I am seeing. Hey! I shout, hey kid! Over here! But the boy does not react to my voice. He simply looks all around himself, spinning in a circle, calling out for his father. "Dad! Where are you?" His voice echoes around the tiled walls, as the deep red light shimmers across the face of the water. "Kid, hey kid." I try blowing my whistle. He does not react. I jump down from the chair to the tile and wave my arms, but the kid just can't see me. It's as if he's looking right through me when he turns my way, and the poor little lad starts to cough. He's swallowing mouthfuls of water and he splutters and chokes. His strokes become more erratic as he keeps on calling for help. He is drowning. Do your job. As a lifeguard you must do your job. Time seems to slow, a little. I watch as the boy starts struggling for real. As he begins to dip below the water. Splashing and crying out for help. For help. I follow procedure without even realizing. 3 quick blasts of the whistle and I have shot myself forwards from the edge of the pool. I am diving forwards. Leaping from the edge and out towards the darkness of the unknown. The boy is a few feet ahead. He draws closer, and closer. And I hit the water with a great splash and a rush of bubbles burst up past my ears. And number X200B. For a moment trapped in time, I am adrift in the void. And number X200B. The pool is impossibly, unfathomably deep. And number X200B. And I know that whatever it is, can see me. All around in the water the slithery shapes draw closer. And number X200B. I've got you. I splutter as I shake off the void and grab him beneath the arms. Immediately turning I power my way towards the edge with the boy trembling and shaking behind me. Arms and legs pumping as fast as I am able, though I cannot lose that terrible feeling of being flanked by the things in the water. Getting closer and closer. I do not know what would happen if they were to reach me. I reach the edge and with a roar of strength I bring round the boy and holding him to my chest I clamber clumsily up and onto the side. I roll away from the edge of the pool, still clutching him as I try to put as much distance between us and the water as I am able. Shooting a look back reveals those menacing dark shapes slink quietly back into the depths, and I come to an exhausted halt, looking down at the boy and moving to help him sit up as I catch my breath. And number X200B. But there is no boy. Not anymore. And number X200B. Just a boy-sized shape, comprised entirely of water. And the second that I comprehend this fact, the water acts as one would expect it to. It just melts right through my hands, splashing down across the tiles and washing over and away. A solid, and then, formless. Gone. And number X200B. Still panting, I push myself up to the wall. I rest myself against it, soaked, and I just sit there for a while. Processing. Trying to think. To put it all together, and failing. And number X200B. The lights through the complex doors behind me send my shadow out long across the snow, and illuminate Kate's face and shine in her eyes. Eyes, that look sadly back into mine. The wind sends the tails of her coat billowing out to the side. What does it mean? I shout above the gale, showing her my wrist, and she draws down her sleeve to reveal her own. 7 souls, she whispers, in a voice I can barely hear. 7 rivers, 7 tunnels, and 7 souls to be saved. And then we can be free. Save 7 souls and your duty is done. We are the sentinels, and the lives are ours to guard. And number X200B. And without another word she turns, and walks away and into the storm.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I worked on a body farm, by RHA 3 Gar. I was a young woman, pursuing my dream of forensic anthropology at Boston University under Professor Manis. He was my mentor, intelligent, tenured, and inspiring. Our class had taken trips to his body farm in upstate New York a few times throughout the semester. It consisted of a variety of environments that were perfect for studying various rates of decomposition: dense woods, thick brush, open fields, ponds, creeks, sheds, cabins, and even a swampy marsh. In the center of it all was the Manis home, an ancient yet beautiful colonial tucked beneath the massive pines. On the last day of classes before winter break, Professor Manis gently grabbed my arm as I was leaving his lecture and asked me to sit with him for a few moments. As we sat and sipped coffee, he asked what my plans were for the holidays. The question was unexpected, but not off-putting. I told him that I was going to stay with my friend Jess. He asked why I wasn't spending it with family, and I went on to explain that I had grown up in the foster system. He apologized profusely, for which I told him it was okay. Professor Manis took another drink and told me that he would be spending Christmas, as well as the remainder of winter, with his sister's family in Florida, leaving his estate and the body farm vacant. I smiled softly as I realized what he was about to inquire. "You're the top student in class by far. How would you like to work on the Manis body farm this winter as part of your PhD program and continue my research while I am down south?" he asked. Christmas with the corpses. I couldn't have said yes faster. If only I had known the horrors that were awaiting me. There were 5 specimens planted on the property that I was to study. Subject 1, female, elderly, 36 months deceased, field. Subject 3, female, elderly, 8 months decreased, inside shed under tarp. Subject 5, female, young adult, 2 weeks deceased, bank of pond, submerged. At least, that's what I told myself. I stepped back as an unexpected sensation pulsated through my body. I felt embarrassed. Her nude body reminded me of my own, and I felt a sudden impulse to cover her. I laughed awkwardly to myself and scribbled the remainder of my notes. Satisfied with my morning's work, I trudged up the snowy hill towards the house to make breakfast. I spent the remainder of the day working on my thesis and watching local television. As the sun set, I drew a bath to unwind. I rested against the back of the clawfoot tub and closed my eyes, soaking the day off of my skin. For a brief moment, my head submerged under the warm water and an image of Polly's pale skin and milky eyes flashed in my mind. I shot up out of the tub, angry with myself for falling asleep. As I began to dry off, a loud thud outside broke the quiet stillness of the night. That night I dreamt of red flowers blooming through the white snow. The nails of his index, middle, and ring fingers had been pushed back as if he had clawed at something. I grabbed the barrel's lid from the snow and ran my fingers along the grain. Towards the center I noticed 3 symmetrical scratches. I felt like I was going to vomit. I sealed the lid and began to think. I told myself it was the result of the barrel toppling over. His hand fell towards the lid and the momentum caused the lacerations when his nails made contact with the wood. It made sense, there was nothing to worry about. Her head was 2 inches closer to the bank than it was the day before. I wasn't able to explain this. I felt adrenaline pulse through my body. Maybe I had drifted instantly into a dream the second I closed my eyes. This idea was shattered as 3 more knocks rapped the glass of the sliding door. I ducked down to the floor, and contemplated my next move. The door was locked, I was sure of it. I knew then the best idea was to make a dash to the phone and call the police. Just before I took off, a muffled voice from the other side of the glass spoke. "LYSS, open the door, bitch." After catching up and a few more drinks, Jess proclaimed that this wonderful evening would most certainly not be right without a Christmas tree. Warmed from alcohol and our snow gear, we decided to head into the woods to chop down a small pine before the sun set. As we neared the shed, I thought of an idea that, at the time, believed would be hilariously brilliant. I told Jess to go into the shed and grab the axe under the tarp since I had to check on one of the bodies, in the back. I remember her distinctly saying, "As long as I don't have to see one of those things I'm happy." I sat back and grinned ear to ear, waiting for Jess' screams as she would soon discover Sheila under the tarp. The screams never came. Instead, Jess emerged from the shed with the axe and said, "I didn't see any tarp, but the axe was leaning against the wall by the door." You know, for such a smart girl you've got a shitty memory. I put on my best fake smile and bantered with her. My mind silently raced. She must have missed it, that's all. It's a dark shed, I'll check in the morning before the storm hits and all of the bodies will be fine. We proceeded into the woods until we found the perfect little tree to chop down and drag back home. The barrel had toppled over once again, but this time the corpse within was nowhere to be seen. As the winter storm raged outside, Jess and I came to the grim conclusion that our only option was to lock ourselves in and wait it out. It was a compelling argument. A wave of musty air hit me as we opened the basement door and descended the stone stairs. I pleaded with Jess to be quick as we scanned the walls with our flashlights. Something about the basement didn't feel right, and I wished at that moment that I could be anywhere else. Jess walked over to the breaker and flipped them to no avail. As she worked, my eye was drawn to a stack of photos on a wooden table in the corner. I began to tremble as I flipped through them. Only to be greeted by a snow-covered Dr. Manis sitting on a chair in the foyer. A shotgun rested lazily next to him. The beam of our flashlight struggled to cut through the darkness, but I knew we were nearing the shed though muscle memory. The crunching snow quieted as a wide-eyed Jess stopped dead in her tracks. "What's the problem?" an annoyed Professor Manis asked. Jess did not respond, and continued to stare, all color draining from her face. I pointed my flashlight ahead and saw them, the silhouettes of 5 familiar humanoid beings standing completely still in the snow. Manis whispered, "It worked," as he ripped the flashlight from my hand and slowly continued towards the row of figures. Jess quietly grabbed my arm and pointed to the pickup truck keys clipped to his belt. It was now or never. I looked back momentarily as Manis shrieked at the top of his lungs. In a split second, I saw the corpses descend on him like pigs at a trough. Manis tired to shout once more, but merely choked as his mouth filled with blood. The next few months were filled with police interrogations, interviews, and an official resignation from the university. The official record states that the Manis estate and farm were abandoned. The specimens on record, as well as Manis himself, were never discovered.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Hi, Audrey. Anyway, Audrey, I had your bank account details and I felt very tempted to just give out your banking details in an elaborate scam, but I figured karma will sort you out eventually. Prisoners and parolees are very resourceful, you know. He told me you're a mother of 3 beautiful little girls, working 2 jobs to make ends meet. I understand that scamming business now.
Something still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
One for Sorrow, by Compilations. She coddled him through infancy and toddlerhood, his elementary school years all the way through his high school. The result, as one might guess, was a bull-headed, arrogant mama's boy with an entitled streak as wide as it was long. Trying to get him to follow rules was a headache, watching him mistreat his sisters was a heartache, and if anyone said anything about his bad behavior to Patty, get ready for an earful. You don't understand him. She'd cry. Graham didn't mean to do anything bad. Maybe his sisters started it. He's a sensitive boy, leave him alone. It was a never-ending string of excuses with her. Trying to talk sense into the kid directly was even worse. You can't tell me what to do. I don't have to listen to you. You aren't the boss of me. Thank Christ, kid. Like I said, little shit. While I didn't really believe that, I still tipped my proverbial hat to them whenever I saw them in her memory. I turned in time to see Graham hurl a full, glass bottle of beer at one of the magpies. The bird, who had been crowing at the boy from a branch, caught the bottle square in the chest. I was halfway across the yard when it landed on the ground with a soft thud. It laid there shuddering, obviously suffering, its little head rolling weakly from side to side. Graham picked up the bottle, which had remained intact, and dropped it on the poor creature once again. What the fuck are you doing? I shoved Graham so hard that he stumbled back and fell onto his backside. I ignored him, well aware that if I didn't, I would do far worse than a simple push, and knelt over the bird. It was only trembling now, its chest rising and falling in quick, futile gasps. A dark liquid bubbled out of its beak. I scooped it up and cradled it in my hands while my family, drawn by the commotion, surrounded us. Did it fall out? My mother asked. Graham killed it. Franny shouted accusingly. Get your son off my property before I kill him. Bullshit, he didn't. I hadn't expected to be so angry, I hadn't even been that upset when he pulled the stunt with the candle, but this was different. He'd tortured a living thing, he'd murdered it, for fun. Let's calm down. My brother-in-law fancied himself a mediator, but I was in no mood. You two can go too, then. I've let a lot of his shit slide over the years, but this? No. Not even you can make up excuses for this. Out! I roared, giving her a push. My mother laid a hand on my arm, but I shook her off. Take him and go before I call the cops and report him for animal abuse. As my parents left with the girls that night, Mom pulled me aside and gave me a kiss on the cheek. I know Graham's a tough kid to love. Be that as it may, honey, please try to get past this. For the family. It's Patty's fault he's like that. I don't know. I wish I did. I hate to see you guys fighting. She smiled, but it was tired and strained. Graham will learn his lesson eventually, but I don't think it's your place to teach it to him. Then who the hell will? I said grumpily. After they'd gone, I sat out back with a beer and listened to the magpie continuously call for her mate. It was a low, sad sound, and it made me think of my gran again and an old poem she'd recite. I didn't remember it all, just the first 2 lines. Well, Graham had certainly seen to it that the one remaining was full of sorrow. I was a bit sad to have lost both of the birds, but it wasn't exactly hard to move on. They were wild animals, not pets, and with Graham off at school, it was easier to let go of my anger. I still refused to see Patty and attempted to avoid any news about her psychopath of a son, but that was more due to years of resentment finally erupting as opposed to just the most recent incident. How's Graham? Mom asked the girls over dinner one night. They were visiting for the weekend and, since Patty couldn't be there, I'd been more than happy to go to my parents' house to have dinner with them. He's fine. Franny said with a roll of her eyes. Just another car gone. Think so. He was in an accident. Mom told me, even as I made a show of not listening by noisily slurping my noodles. He rear-ended someone. Not all of it. Mom said. I felt exactly zero sympathy for him. As the weeks went on, more bad news regarding my nephew kept trickling in. He'd been out for a jog and tripped into a thorny bush. He was accused of throwing rocks at a girl sitting near him while she ate lunch in the quad. He was showing up late and disorganized to class. I didn't mind these sorts of updates. If anything, they brightened my day just a bit. Seemed the little shit was finally getting what he deserved. Instead, he called me. It was late and I was just about to head to bed when my phone rang. When I saw Graham's name on the ID, I almost didn't pick up, but my bleeding heart got the best of me. How did you do it? Graham asked edgily. His tone made me picture him hunched over in a chair, hair wild, eyes red-rimmed, rocking back and forth while he clutched the phone. Tell me how you did it. How are you controlling it? Did what? I was one more cryptic question away from hanging up. The damn bird, asshole. His voice cracked and he blubbered into the line. Okay, you're going to have to explain this to me like I have no idea what you're talking about. It's done worse. It dropped fucking rocks on another kid and she blamed me. It even flew into my car window and made me crash. Yes. It sits at my bedroom window and taps on the glass all night. I can't get any sleep, I haven't in weeks. You have to make it stop. His voice was strained with desperate pleading. Well, you did kill her mate. After I'd set the phone down, I wandered to my back window and looked across the dark yard, to the tree where the magpies had made their nest. It had remained empty since the female had abandoned it. One for sorrow.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
I found a strange medical textbook washed up on a beach. Not sure what to make of it, by Oldmanriver 1. Hey all. I was walking my dog, see photo for the little cutie, today at the beach near my house when I saw a book wrapped in some sort of plastic-like material, sticking out the mud/sand. It's technically a salt marsh, but it's basically a beach at high tide. Low tide it gets muddy. It unwrapped pretty easily and is in shockingly good condition considering it's a book that I found sort of in the ocean. But that's not the confusing part. What confuses me is that it's a medical book filled with diseases and animals that I'm fairly certain don't exist. I googled a few of them and I got bupkies. It seems pretty official, is bound really well, and clearly from a while ago, so it seems unlikely that it's either some weird craft project or a modern one-off gag book or something. I dunno, I'll admit, it's kind of freaking me out. Once inside the body, it travels along the olfactory nerve if in the sinuses/throat or the inner ear canal if in the ear. From there, it burrows into the brain tissue until it reaches the hypothalamus. While certainly painful for the host, it's generally reported as no more painful than a sinus infection and is often mistaken for one. How the octopus knows where to burrow is currently unknown. After it reaches the hypothalamus, it begins excreting high concentrations of both ghrelin, inducing a constant state of hunger in the host, and a unique protein that mimics the host's own tissue, preventing an immune response. The octopus also produces an anti-nausea neuroleptic-like chemical to prevent the host from vomiting, encouraging even more rapid eating. The metabolism of the host reduces sharply following an infection and weight gain is typically substantial. The tongue and throat are frequently calloused and white, the jaw may swell, and the stomach distends. Speech is difficult. Because the octopus floods the brain with potent dopamine analogs, friends and family concerned about this strange behavior are met with extreme resistance from the host, and thus, self-isolating is not uncommon, nor is violence. The high mortality rate is, surprisingly, unrelated to patient resistance however, and instead the inability to kill the octopus while leaving the host unharmed. As the octopus grows, its arms spread and push through the brain. Should the octopus die at any stage beyond its initial journey into the brain, the comprehensive integration of the octopus within the brain structure quickly leads to tissue necrosis and death. Attempts have been made to surgically remove the octopus, but all have been unsuccessful. The octopus creates a suction-like hold on wherever the arms grow, and external movement of the arms results in immediate and massive hemorrhaging. As the host's body begins to deteriorate from the near-constant and extreme caloric intake, post-mortem examinations almost always indicate a near-complete destruction of liver and pancreatic tissue. The host will seek relief in the ocean. Reasons given by the host for traveling to the ocean vary. Interviews with infected patients are inconsistent, but the sense of impending doom should they stay on land is universal. Consequently, attempts to restrain and prevent a host from fleeing should always be considered with extreme caution. As to the host, it is literally life or death. When the host reaches an ocean body, they will use the last of their energy to swim out no less than a mile from shore. Once a sufficient distance is reached, we can only assume the octopus is able to detect the differences between deep versus shallow ocean water. The host will lay face down in the water until they drown. The now adult octopus will exit through the nose and re-enter through the belly button, splitting itself in two. While one half initially withers and shrinks dramatically, this decline is quickly reversed and the two halves rapidly grow into two separate and distinct full-size adult octopods. Note, interestingly, the adolescent marionette octopus has two separate genomes, one being inactive throughout most of its life. When it physically splits, one half activates the second genome and deactivates the first set. Its initial shrinkage is believed to be from the repair needed after this activation. After reaching their full size, the two octopods mate and typically lay hundreds of thousands of eggs within the body cavity, each egg having up to 50 viable embryos. The male octopus dies almost immediately after copulation and the female follows soon after egg laying. The eggs hatch within a week and use the body as their first source of food. From there, they swim back to shore to find a suitable host. Because of the rapid response needed for effective treatment, any patient complaining of sinus pain or ear pain with a recent history of Atlantic Ocean water swimming should immediately be given an X-ray to rule out a marionette octopus infection. Update. I made a game inspired by this experience.
And now, as the hour gets cold and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is HorrorSlop.
I work at an amusement park where only half of the actors are actual actors. After I introduce the two pretenders from the Hollywood section in my last post, I'll have to touch on one of my earlier mentions again this time. I came into work at around 12 and went straight for the cage of the sock puppet. He was apparently expecting me since he was sitting outside his shelter and instantly came bounding towards me. It's rare that I receive such an exuberant greeting from him, but I guess he does have his lively days after all. One time, I brought in a plushie to see if that would get him going, and it actually did. He chased after it, but instead of bringing it back to me, he attempted to eat it. At least until he noticed what he was digging his teeth into was merely a helpless heap of cotton and not some kind of treat. He went on to stare at me with a look of betrayal that entire day. I think the concept of playing is simply beyond his understanding. Anyways, after feeding and grooming him a little, we set out on our daily walk around the park. On our way, we encountered Mitchell. He was sitting at a table outside a saloon in Twin Vale Point, eating his homemade lunch. I sat down across from him and we talked for a while, at first only about this and that, until for some reason, the topic of Darius came up. Mitchell shrugged. I don't think the cowboy needs me either, but I still come in to check up on him. As proven by you sitting here eating, I remarked, raising a brow. I ended the call and picked up my coworker's smartphone. It showed 7 missed calls in total, 2 of which I knew were my own. Most of the others were listed as Mom and Dad. There was even a message from his mother reading, I thought you were going to come over this morning. I nodded sternly. We have to go look for him, I uttered, a dry feeling in my throat. We decided it would be best to split up. While I began by looking in the candy section, Mitchell stayed in the ghost town. We promised we would call the other over the phone as soon as we would find any trace of our missing friend. It was eerie walking through the Candyland all by myself. I remember wishing I had the sock puppet by my side. Even though I had my whip with me, I couldn't help but feel vulnerable on my own. The thought of Darius lying around somewhere, possibly severely wounded or even worse, made my stomach churn. It was just Nathan and me with no one else in sight. I swallowed my unease and approached the coachman. As I got closer, I couldn't help but wrinkle my nose at the stench that old blanket wrapped around his shoulders was emanating. It smelled like horse, but somehow even stronger than an actual horse, if that makes sense. Hi, I stammered, have you? With that, he straightened up in his seat again and on his command, the horses began trotting off. I didn't even have the time to thank him. Heeding his advice, I began running all the way back to the horror section, fumbling for my cell phone in the process. I called Mitchell, who was thankfully not too far away, and told him to meet me in front of the funhouse Nathan had told me to go to. The third room is where Darius would normally be. It holds a hospital stretcher with another corpse prop on it and there are fake severed limbs hanging on meat hooks from the ceiling. It may sound lame the way I describe it, but it looks pretty freaky with flashing lights. The last room is basically just the exit, but it also holds some skeleton animatronics that can pop out of the walls to either side. Darius? I called out, my voice trembling ever so slightly. Oh my God, I whispered before rushing to his side. What happened? We need to get you to a hospital, I told him, fumbling for my car keys. Yes, I noticed the irony in that, I added upon feeling Mitchell's eyes on me. Wait, no. Darius coughed and leaned forward, holding out his hand to stop me. I'll be fine. It was mostly shock, really. I think I wanted to take her outside. I don't know why anymore, maybe just for some fresh air. Can't hurt, right? So I go up to her and I place my hands on her shoulders as always. And then all of a sudden, she spins around, and she grabs me and pushes me into that wheelchair and then. His voice trailed off as his face contorted in disgust. And then she just takes her hand and shoves it down my throat. She was holding something, I think. Something small and cold, and I don't know what it was, but she pulls her hand back out so I swallow it. He retched slightly at the memory. Everything went dark after that. I guess I passed out due to the shock, that's happened to me before. He let out a long sigh. I can't believe it. I've been assigned to the nurse for 5 years. She's never shown any signs of, well, sentience before. And now, all of a sudden, this outburst. I don't get it. What in the world is going on with her? And other than that, you're okay? I asked softly. Does it hurt anywhere? Darius shook his head. No. It was just the shock, I'm sure of it. How long was I out for? Darius nodded slowly. Yeah, okay. Fine. Thanks, one more thing though. Where's the nurse at right now? I went to the Hollywood section first. There I met Caroline, who was thankfully coming in like clockwork as always. I waited for her to ask the pianist her question and afterwards told her about what had happened to Darius. She was understandably unsettled and joined me in looking for the pretender. Yeah, after a couple hours it just came back out the natural way, I guess. Caroline nodded eagerly and Mitchell agreed. I reminded him to tell Darius and to bring the mystery key. Caroline immediately called Oliver and I informed Anne and Maxine. We'll all meet up at the large saloon in Twin Vale Point tomorrow at 4 in the afternoon. I don't know what we will be able to find out, if we will find out anything at all, but I do believe this will be interesting. Plus, this is my chance to get some answers out of the other not actors. I know the cowboy can't talk, but, as a lot of commenters have pointed out, he might be able to write or tell us something the visual way. As for the aged diva, I believe that maybe her handler Oliver can get through to her. The two seem to have somewhat of a connection, so it's at least worth a try. I don't think the pianist will be too helpful, but Caroline says asking some more questions for once probably won't hurt. I must admit I'm excited. We just might be getting some answers after all. Part 8, Mr. Scratch. Part 9, Firewater. Part 11, Weird Stuff on Halloween. Part 12, Girls' Night In. Part 15, 20 Questions. Part 16, Connections. Part 17, Iron.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I did it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.